Good morning, everybody, and good morning, First Minister, good morning, Leader. Welcome to the 27th State of the City Economy Conference here at the Old Fruitmarket in the Merchant City in Glasgow. My name's Greg Clark. I'm your host for this morning. It's a great honour to be here. Thank you again to Glasgow City Council for inviting me to be here. Now, this is Glasgow's 850th birthday year. Happy birthday, Glasgow. It's your technology, because we're going to go straight into Wi-Fi and Slido for a few minutes, because during the panel discussions that we're going to have, I'm going to be inviting you to submit the questions live to our panelists. So as you can see, the Slido hashtag is hashtag SOCE, State of the City Economy 25. I want you to try to get in there. I think we've got a slide that tells you that the Wi-Fi to use is City Hall's public, if you're not yet in there. And I'd like very much, if we could, then to go to the first question, which is, so there we are. City Hall's public is there, that's the Wi-Fi. SOCE 25 is your Slido hashtag. If we could go into the first Slido. Of course, my iPad's now gone blank, which is not very helpful, but here we go. How far out was Kenny McLean's goal against Denmark? Was it 60 metres, 50 metres, 70 metres or 40 metres? Please vote now. 60 metres is doing very well so far, 50 metres. Look, 70 metres is overtaking 40. Do you get the idea of this? So I can see that 58 of you have voted. Let's just have a few more of you voting, because we want to make sure you're all participating in the event. Let's try to get up to at least 100. We're on 80 now. So please give us your votes. Was it 60, 50, 70 or 40? Kenny McLean's glorious goal. 107 of you have voted. 60 metres is the correct answer. So well done, everyone. Thank you very much. Let's go now to our second one, which is a word cloud. Can we see the word cloud question, please? We're asking you, what are the things you'd really like to discuss today at the State of the City Economy Conference? And we should be building a word cloud. Could we have our word cloud on the screen, please? Yeah. What would you like to hear about today? What would you like to discuss today? Just one word each. And if you see a word that you like, you can endorse it so that becomes bigger. So devolution, growth, investment, bus franchising. Please keep going. Let's have the things you want to talk about. Decarbonisation, music, very important in this venue. Progress, growth, investment coming through very well. The city centre, child poverty is important to people. Regeneration, inclusion. Let's keep going. Support the ones that you like and add the ones that are not there that you want to see, and let everybody pile into this. 151 of you have contributed. See if we can get up to 200 now, and we're on our way. So growth is the biggest one. Investment, devolution, development, regeneration, innovation, metro, skills. Very good. 197 of you, 198, 200 of you. Let's just pause that there and say thank you very much. We aim to discuss as many of these things as possible, and this is the platform through which you can ask the questions that you want to ask. Let's go very quickly to our third question. We're in an incredible venue here, the Old Fruitmarket in the City Halls. How many times have you been here before is the next question. Could we see that again on the screen, please? Yeah, how many times have you been to the Old Fruitmarket before? Let's have your votes, please. Just getting in some practice here. So I can't even count. There's 3% of you who've been here many, many times. I know that the council leader, who's been sharing with me some of her experiences of being here, has been here many, many times. And this just seems an absolutely glorious venue, and the huge range of music and other kinds of performance that occur here, just incredible. So for those of you, the 27% of you who are here for the first time, a big warm welcome. Let's give them a round of applause, if we may. So we're going to proceed this morning with two keynote speakers, then our first panel, then another keynote speaker, and then our final panel. And it's my great honour to invite to the stage your host, the leader of Glasgow City Council, Councillor Susan Aitken.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Greg. And I'm delighted to add my welcome to the 27th annual State of the City Economy Conference, and our first here in the very stylish City Halls and Old Fruitmarket. As Greg said, I would have been on the more times than I can count option on Slido there. I did not ever expect to be standing on the stage though. That is definitely a first for me. This is a venue that's absolutely steeped in Glasgow's civic and cultural and mercantile past, so it's just right for hosting our keynote economic event in our 850th birthday year. And for a first for my time in doing this speech, we're also delighted that Scotland's First Minister has been able to find some time in his diary to join us as a keynote speaker to mark our birthday as well. So, in our 850th birthday, Glasgow 850, I think, has really captured imaginations. It's been very much a community-led initiative right across the city. In the council, we have been the enabling force, but it has been our communities that have led on the celebrations. And there's not been a part of the city that hasn't had at least one event to celebrate Glasgow 850. And there is something about the remarkable longevity of a city that has been written off more than once in its history, reminding us about our capacity for renewal and reinvention, how Glasgow keeps on overcoming challenges that are not of our own making, to embrace progress and change. And there has been momentum in the next chapter of our history unfolding right before us in this milestone year. Change is happening. The city whose 900th birthday the next generation of Glaswegians will celebrate is already taking shape. These, of course, are still tough times. They're difficult conditions still for businesses and for households. We've got a poorly performing UK economy, still rising costs of living, and ongoing international upheaval, and it's impossible for Glasgow to counter every headwind that we face. But supported by civic partnerships that are among the strongest in these islands and that are incredibly well represented in this room, and no little amount of pride in our great city, we're actually putting up a pretty good fight, and we've got the evidence to show that we are winning. I hope this morning to give you a sense of where and how that's happening. The renewal of George Square epitomises the wider renewal happening within Glasgow as we speak. Now nearing its halfway stage, our new city centrepiece will be a catalyst for further transformation. So too will the £120 million Avenues project. As Buchanan Street has long shown us, better public spaces are better for people and for business. A level of disruption, of course, is inevitable, but if you've got time, please do check out Pitt Street or the western section of Argyll Street to see for yourselves the kinds of improvements that will be replicated across the city centre. Nobody here today needs me to rehearse for you the impact of the economic shocks and the cultural shifts of the past decade. But we can't and we shouldn't turn back the clock on our city centre. The more diverse, sustainable and resilient city centre that it needs to be to remain as Scotland's foremost economic and cultural asset is taking shape every day. Glasgow's retail sector is bouncing back, performing more strongly than we predicted. We can again talk confidently about being the UK's largest retail centre outside London. Benchmarked against our peers, Glasgow's outstripping the UK average and comparators like Edinburgh and Manchester in sales growth, with new global brands like Uniqlo and Anthropologie boosting our retail offer. We're also outperforming our peers in food and drink sales, with new hospitality offer reflecting an increased buoyancy. And work instigated by our city centre task force and led by the sub-club's Mike Grieve, somebody who knows Glasgow's late night scene like the back of his hand, is going to result in a new nighttime economy leadership model, one that is tailor-made for Glasgow, and that will be in place by early 2026 and provide energy and direction. And you might have seen it on the slides as you were coming in. Our new Get You in Town campaign is a brilliant reminder of the emotional pull of the city centre as the place to meet up and have a great night out. We've had a period of flux and adjustment, but we're ready to remind not just the world, but also ourselves about Glasgow's world-leading hospitality and late-night culture. And later today, we're expecting the outcome of the ballot on whether city centre businesses have decided to establish a business improvement district. It's been an odd anomaly that Glasgow is one of the very few UK cities without a city centre bid, and it's meant us going without a substantial financial resource that our comparators have been able to benefit from. So a positive result will rectify that. And in the meantime, I congratulate everyone who's been involved in leading that campaign. Headline economic performance is also encouraging. Over the past decade, GVA per hour worked in the Glasgow City region has outpaced the UK average and is higher than the West Midlands, Liverpool and Cardiff city regions, while our unemployment rate is the lowest of the UK's core city regions. We remain in the top 1/3 of the world's leading financial centres and the second most popular UK destination outside London for FDI, securing 27 investments worth more than £350 million and creating over 2,800 jobs in the past year alone. From US-based Halon and their work on internationally recognised film, gaming and television productions, to German space startup High Impulse, and iconic Japanese brand Hitachi's new Centre of Engineering Excellence, the profile and the sectoral breadth of new investment shows the strength and diversity of Glasgow's economy. We'll hear more in the first of our two panels this morning from partners who are keeping Glasgow in the global eye and connecting us with international opportunities. But as a bit of a preview, Team Glasgow trade missions to the USA, China, Singapore and Germany this year have been promoting our high-tech economy, creative industries and tourism offers to growing markets. Glasgow Airport's new owner, Avi Alliance, continues to make good on its commitments, adding 2 new direct services to North America since October, reconnecting Glasgow with our biggest source of inward investment and tourism. Tourism and events support more than 37,000 jobs and deliver an economic benefit of almost £2.5 billion, and they're showing remarkable growth. Overnight visitor numbers have risen by 20%, reaching 4.7 million, and we're hosting more international conference delegates than anywhere in the UK outside London. The Scottish Event Campus is marking 40 years at the centre of Glasgow and Scotland's cultural life, and I look forward to hearing more about their plans to grow and evolve. And of course, next summer, our city will once again step up to the international spotlight. The 2026 Commonwealth Games is yet another fantastic opportunity to showcase global Glasgow and our people. This is a different context from Glasgow 2014, but the reason that the organisers of major events keep coming back to Glasgow is because they know that we deliver, and in 8 months' time, be in no doubt that Glasgow will rise to the occasion again, as we always do. Earlier this autumn, in response to calls from business to promote all of Glasgow's strengths, assets and places under a single consistent and compelling brand, the Council created a new destination marketing organisation, further strengthening our economic development capabilities. Destination Glasgow brings together inward investment, tourism, the conference sector and city promotion to serve as Glasgow's single voice to the city and to the world. And it's got quite the story to tell, a resilient, evolving and international city with personality, authenticity, strong values and shared goals. Glasgow has always been an internationalist city, open to the world, and our interactions with other cities bring new perspectives to challenges here at home. For the past year, I've had the privilege of chairing the United Nations Forum of Mayors. At its global meeting in Geneva last month, the sheer scale of what is a global housing emergency was laid bare. There is barely a city in the world not experiencing their own version of the multiple and overlapping factors that are driving Glasgow's housing challenges. Ours can be summarised as a combination of the impact of Brexit and inflation on construction, labour and borrowing costs, with a cost of living crisis, international population movements, and the paucity of support for cities like ours to house people granted refugee status here in the UK. Yet, even against a background of unprecedented pressures and in contexts that are often beyond our control, Glasgow's partnerships are unlocking solutions. In the past 5 years, we've delivered over 4,500 new affordable homes, more than any other local authority in these islands, more than Liverpool and Manchester combined. Our housing investment plan for the next 5 years will deliver a further 6,400, with around 20,000 live housing applications currently in the pipeline. We're also bringing empty properties back into use at an average of around 600 a year, including 850 in the past year alone. Glasgow understands, perhaps better than any other place on these islands, how fundamental investment in high-quality housing infrastructure is to inclusion, prosperity and equity. Good places to live and work and good connectivity. These are the vital underpinnings for attracting and retaining talent, jobs and investment, and for the well-being of everybody who lives here. The diversity of our population and the changing expectations of cities mean that there's the full gamut of housing need and demand in Glasgow, and we need to build homes of all tenures for all types of people. Young folk leaving home for the first time, growing families, older people, key workers, graduates, students, refugees, people living in insecure accommodation, people worried they might lose their homes, and those who already have. That's why we are willing to take more risks, test new funding structures, and lead the way on new living concepts, bringing new development players into the city. They're benchmarking Glasgow against UK comparators and liking what they see. That means more development coming off the drawing board and translating into spades in the ground and cranes in the sky. The Vita Group, for example, has acquired several key sites, including the Met Tower, where it will introduce its co-living concept to Scotland for the first time. And it's great to see a developer with a track record of success finding a solution for this Glasgow landmark after previous stalled attempts and pioneering a new residential model in the process. Hugely encouraging also is the impetus around the transformation of brownfield sites. Galliard Apsley's College Gardens project, for example, will transform the 7-acre site behind High Street Station, creating a new residential quarter and breathing life into a derelict space. And it's our desire to unlock and transform Glasgow's long-standing derelict sites, the scars of our deindustrialisation, that led to the Council agreeing a few weeks ago to enter into formal negotiations with Aviva Capital Investment and the Scottish National Investment Bank on a 75-acre site in Cowlairs, north of the city centre. We've been discussing a range of opportunities with Aviva Capital Partners for some time, and under the plans we're now seeking to progress with them and SNIB up to 1,500 new homes, a whole new community, would be delivered in an area that has lain derelict for decades, with an anticipated commencement date in 2027. This is a first for Scotland, a pioneering investment model bringing together the power of institutional investment, the enabling capital of Scotland's state-owned investment bank, and a local authority with burning ambition to accelerate the transformation of challenging sites into great places for Glaswegians, old and new, to call home. If we can make this model work for Cowlairs, and I see no reason why we won't, then it's got the potential to be replicated many times over I want to go faster in turning our post-industrial legacy into better places and better opportunities for the folk that live in them. And it's not only housing, colleagues, where we're seeing developer confidence reflected. There's the very impressive Love Loan development with hotel, leisure and retail, combining beautifully restored heritage properties with new build just on the edge of George Square. The mixed-use Charing Cross Gateway with its potential to transform the western edge of the city centre, or the hotel plans for the distinctive 95 Bothwell Street, aka the Spider-Man building now, bringing new high-end leisure to the heart of the business district. And I can announce today that plans for the refurbishment and enhancement of Buchanan Galleries have now been approved. And alongside nearby developments either already on site or in the pipeline, they will be a major catalyst for Sauchiehall Street's next era. And Glasgow continues to attract major office developments, which are transforming our economy and our streetscapes. Lucent and Aurora, both on Bothwell Street and completed in the past year, provide high-end office space on a par with anything in the City of London. Beautiful buildings that cement our business district standing as a vibrant, connected and international location. Over the coming year, we'll have opportunities to showcase the city, including at our own real estate event in early 2026 and next June at the British Council of Offices' first conference in Scotland in a very long time. And responding to what our business community have told us they'd like to see, next year we'll supplement our annual delegation at UK Reef with a presence at MIPIM, promoting Glasgow on both the UK and international stages. Our message is clear. Glasgow is open for business to good quality development that benefits the city, our economy, our places and our people. And as we ready ourselves for an upsurge in development, the Council will work to ensure that our systems and processes have the capacity and agility to respond to a newly energised landscape. The combination of entrepreneurialism and cutting-edge research that our second panel today will explore further, alongside the City Region's strengths in education, are front and centre of our economic progress and potential. That arc of knowledge from Govan to the West End and on to the city centre is fundamental to our profile as a world-class hub for investment, enterprise and collaboration. From pioneering innovation to attracting international talent and FDI, our universities and colleges have been a crucial stimulus, bringing ingenuity and creativity into Glasgow's mainstream more than at any time since the Enlightenment, and inspiring the next chapter in our history. The City Region's innovation economy may still be in its relative infancy, but official DCIT figures show that we're already talking about over 5,000 businesses employing over 50,000 people in sectors such as advanced manufacturing, digital and tech, life sciences and space. And in our university and college population of 185,000 students, we've got an enviable skills and talent pipeline, future graduates with sought-after specialisms in key growth sectors carving their careers in and around Glasgow. And notably, just under half of our college students graduate in subjects that open pathways to that new economy. That's growth and innovation with inclusion at their core. Meanwhile, world-class research generating real-world impacts continues to emerge from our universities. Over recent years, Glasgow and Strathclyde universities together have supported over 80 spin-out companies, combining healthy risk appetite with industrial priorities and securing public and private investment worth hundreds of millions. And the City Region's Innovation Accelerator programme has exceeded the Treasury's targets for co-investment, with an additional £50 million so far coming from the private sector and more than 300 jobs being created. Health and life sciences is just one example of a dynamic sector where Glasgow's at the forefront, one ranked by DCIT as more innovative than comparators in London and the Oxfam cluster, and which is projected to grow by 300% across Scotland in the next decade. Benefiting from an ecosystem with unparalleled access to clinical expertise, the city's become a live testbed for new health technologies and treatments. And it's an area of our economy where our other university, Glasgow Caledonian, is playing an increasingly important role. Health and life sciences are a success story we want even more of. So I'm delighted today to announce our call for ambitious proposals that could benefit from a share of £25 million now available through the Local Innovation Partnerships Fund. Led by UK Research and Innovation and administered here in the City region, funding will be awarded to health and life sciences projects that are moving research from the laboratory into real-world use. Also continuing to emerge is pioneering climate technology with global potential. The University of Strathclyde's new Advanced Net Zero Innovation Centre near Glasgow Airport is conducting industrial-scale research with capabilities for clean energy, transport and digital tech being tested and developed. And just this month, Sustainable Ventures, Europe's leading growth partner for climate tech, agreed the lease for Charles Rennie Mackintosh's A-listed Lighthouse, which will become a base for climate startups. Already hugely successful in London and Manchester, this location and Glasgow's ecosystem of talent, assets and nearby corporates will help deliver Sustainable Ventures' goal of attracting £1 billion of investment and creating 5,000 green jobs in Scotland by 2035. And the point about the Lighthouse is important here because the partnerships that are driving forward our innovation economy are also contributing to Glasgow's physical infrastructure and built environment. The Glasgow City and Glasgow Riverside Innovation Districts, for example, have stimulated remarkable levels of regeneration into communities like Govan. At last year's State of the City conference, colleagues, the election of a new UK government and an alignment of views on the importance of city regions, of drivers of growth and equity, provided the opportunity for a proposition from the Glasgow City region. Our pitch to national governments is clear. Release the brakes, holding the city region's potential back, and in return, we'll unlock the most compelling opportunity in these islands for inclusive economic growth and transformation of place. From the Scottish Government, that's about devolving to us the policy levers and accompanying finance that's already in the system that will help generate the successes we know the Glasgow City region has the potential to deliver. And from the UK Government, it's an expectation of parity of capital resource with the other metropolitan regions correctly recognised as engine rooms of the UK economy. I and my fellow city region leaders and our academic and industry partners in the Glasgow Economic Leadership Board together maintain the primacy of place over politics. Our devolution deal makes clear our willingness to work together to shape an arrangement that recognises and responds to our position as a city region in a devolved nation. As leader of the city at the heart of Scotland's only metropolis, I understand more than most that the devolution settlement can at times be complicated. But devolution is fast approaching 30 years old. We need to be long past the stage of manufactured Mexican standoffs, nor should differences in democratic governance arrangements excuse glaring disparities in approaches and priorities north and south of the border. The scale of the opportunity on our doorstep now demands an urgency of response, and with the right tripartite approach, the Glasgow City region could begin to deliver on our devolution deal tomorrow. So today I make that offerment to governments again. Be bold, grasp this moment and support us to unleash our potential. To the Chancellor and our colleagues in the UK Government, I say, match the investment already delivered to our English peers. And to the Scottish Government, devolve to us powers and resources that currently sit with national agencies. First Minister, together we can reap rewards for our shared ambitions. Economic growth driven by productivity, equity, inclusion, sustainability and community. Not trickle-down growth as an end in itself, but economic growth with a plan and a purpose to lift and keep citizens out of poverty, to focus on the people doing the everyday work of serving in shops or cleaning offices, as well as those working at the cutting edge of innovation, to redress the unjust transition suffered by West Central Scotland during the last century, while undoing the damage inflicted on the planet by our high-carbon past, and to keep building a highly productive, sustainable and resilient regional economy that can be an anchor not only for this place, but for all of Scotland. In Clyde Metro, we have the largest, most complex and most ambitious project being progressed in the UK, much more than a transport project. Metro will be a lightning rod for investment and transformation. Working together, the 8 city region authorities, SPT and Transport Scotland have completed the vision for Clyde Metro to deliver that transformational change, and it's recently been selected for National Wealth Fund support to help attract investment. But the sheer scale of Clyde Metro and its potential as a vehicle for enterprise and growth, inward investment, land assembly and development and climate ambition needs even greater collaboration. What we ask is ambition and commitment to match our own. The Glasgow City region stands ready. And First Minister, I look forward to us working together to scope out exactly how we deliver regional devolution across housing, skills, transport, land use, enterprise, business growth, innovation, and to forge a path that other places in Scotland can follow. Friends, I doubt this will be news to anybody here, especially the non-Glaswegians among you, but we can be a wee bit chippy around these parts sometimes. A large part of that comes down, I'd suggest, to the fact that not only throughout my lifetime, but probably for a century or more, Glasgow's often been positioned as Scotland's problem. Too big, too poor, too violent, too unhealthy, too messy, too bolshy, too gallus, too urban. It's an attitude that's still pervasive in some sections of Scottish public life. There are some who are reluctant to ever let us be anything other than no mean city. The reality is, though, Glasgow's challenges are challenges that can be found in any community in Scotland. It's just that our size and our history magnify and intensify their scale and intensity. So I'd like to close my remarks today by suggesting a different proposition. That it's in Glasgow where the solutions to Scotland's challenges are generated and where the pace for our national, economic, social and cultural progress is set. Those of you who were following the rather disappointing events at COP30 might have learned a new word, one that was used by the Brazilian presidency as their theme for negotiations, mutirão. It comes from one of Brazil's indigenous languages, and it means a collective effort, different communities mobilising towards a common goal. And when I learned it at the local leaders' climate summit in Rio the week before COP, it was a word that really resonated with me, and it feels really apt for how we do things in Glasgow. We might have more prosaic words for it: partnership, collaboration, cooperation, participation. But it's that same spirit of mutirão that animates the way that we respond to challenges that might cause others to lose their nerve. It's a theme that's already run through my remarks today, the collaborations that are driving our city and regional economy, the community-led partnerships that are transforming neighbourhoods in every corner of our city. But I think also about Glasgow's international leadership on climate. We're developing pioneering investment models that would put affordable energy and green skills at the heart of our net zero transition. The clean air improvements already being delivered by Scotland's first low emission zone, or the Thistle, the UK's first safer drug consumption facility, a necessarily radical and compassionate response to a public health emergency. Or Glasgow's position as the confidently diverse vanguard of a multicultural nation, a city giving sanctuary to people fleeing war and persecution, where fully half of the smart young folk who move here to study choose to stay and make their lives, where we embrace the different and the new, where you can now sample a wider selection of international cuisines than anywhere in these islands outside of London. That, colleagues, is our Glasgow, the city that our collective effort of communities has made. And doesn't it sound like an effort that you'd want to be part of? At our best in Glasgow, we're a city that brings together pride in place with pride of welcome, ingenuity with collaboration, culture with community. That's why it has always been in Glasgow that modern Scotland has been made, and where in our 850th birthday year, it's still being made. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your patience, colleagues.
Susan, thank you very much indeed. This has been a formidable statement of progress, momentum, compassion, and ambition. And as everybody in the room knows, it's a sign, a hallmark of a healthy democracy that people do have the right to protest and to raise their voices. And they can do that here in Glasgow without fear of being imprisoned or being violated. And I thank you, Susan, for your patience. And I thank everybody in the room for their patience with the protest as it happened. I think we should give Susan one more round of applause. Now, right at the heart of Susan's address was a proposition for a new cycle of even deeper cooperation and co-investment between Glasgow, the city region, the Scottish Government and the UK Government. And therefore it's a great honour now to introduce our guest of honour, the First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney. First Minister.
Thank you very much, Greg. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an enormous pleasure to be with you this morning. And Greg, I think you've set the standard as to how all events in Scotland must now commence with the showing of Kenny McLean's goal from the halfway line. And I'm delighted to hear, there's so much in Susan's speech that I was delighted to hear, and such an impressive explanation of the powerful agenda that's being pursued in Glasgow. But her reference to the fact that there are 2 new routes to the United States being have been commissioned from Glasgow Airport. And I'm told there are many, many people who are randomly buying flights to the United States in June in the hope that the draw will be somewhat convenient to the choices that they've made already. So to Cam Jandu, I would simply say, just get some more flights to the United States for next summer. I suspect there'll be a real appetite to get there. It's an enormous privilege to be with you here in the Old Fruitmarket, one of Glasgow's most iconic venues, and a space that captures something of the story of the city itself, from a dependence on heavy industry and commerce to reinvention and renewal, a place where traders once sold goods from across the world, and today a place where ideas are shared and Scotland's outward-looking culture is celebrated. And what better place to reflect on the city's remarkable journey as Glasgow marks 850 years of civic life. This milestone not only offers a moment to reflect on how far this city has come, but also to look ahead to where the city is going next. Because Glasgow's story has always been one of transformation, from its roots as a medieval market town to a global hub of shipbuilding and heavy industry, to the creative, cultural and commercial powerhouse that we know and that we see and we experience today. It is a city that has never stood still. And that is particularly true under the leadership of Susan Aitken. Susan's work, the work of her administration, to draw in new businesses, to build new homes, to create new pathways out of poverty, is clearly producing results. And the impressive programme of delivery and ambition that Susan has explained to us this morning is a huge asset for the city. And one of the particular projects that Susan talked about is the collaboration involving the Scottish National Investment Bank at Cowlairs with the City Council. And what that of course represents is the potential for us to draw together all of the assets of Scotland to work in harmony here in the city of Glasgow to aid and to fuel the transformation of the city. And I warmly pledge the commitment of the Scottish Government to do exactly that in the period to come. I also want to express formally to the City of Glasgow my warmest thanks to the City for its willingness to work with us to enable the hosting of the Commonwealth Games next summer. This was done in extremis to make sure the Commonwealth Games could have a venue for next year. But it is a mark of the strength of the city, its reputation for the hosting of events, and its pragmatism in being able to host an event of this scale and of this significance, that the City Council has been able to do exactly that in working with those responsible for the development of the Commonwealth Games. So that is just one additional example of the enormous strength of Glasgow, its capacity to host on Scotland's behalf such a major international event which will help to showcase and to fuel the reputation of Scotland overseas. So I express my thanks to Glasgow for its willingness to host the Commonwealth Games and look forward to those events. So as a city of welcome, not just for the Commonwealth Games, but also for an expanding tourism and events sector, a city for investment, with Glasgow the best city in the United Kingdom outside of London for foreign direct investment, a city of connection. And I commend the City Council and the regional partners for the important and ambitious Clyde Metro project, which has the potential to be truly transformational and in which the Scottish Government through Transport Scotland will be active and vigorous participants. We live in a time of great change, of almost unprecedented uncertainty. So much has happened since the financial crash now almost 2 decades ago. Brexit, the COVID pandemic, the inflation spike that followed Russia's assault on Ukraine. Strong headwinds for this city and for our country. But Glasgow has kept moving forward because the fundamentals of this city and of this country are strong. A highly skilled population, a deeply ingrained culture of entrepreneurship and innovation, world-class universities and colleges, strong communities, access, if we might make the right choices, to vast amounts of low-cost renewable energy. Glasgow and Scotland are well placed to flourish in the years ahead. It is because we are so blessed that I'm all the more determined to deliver on my government's central economic mission, to increase the wealth and well-being of our citizens by building a more productive, more dynamic and more regionally balanced economy driven by innovation, investment and inclusive growth, and therefore capable of achieving the government's aims of eradicating child poverty, enabling our transition to net zero and strengthening our public services, particularly the National Health Service, because the generation of that inclusive wealth, that support of the well-being of our citizens is at the heart of everything we aim to do as a government and as a country. And in this next chapter, just as in the last, Glasgow and its city region will be at the very heart of leading Scotland to be once again the beating heart of Scotland's economic success, our economic renewal. Because at the heart of this government's economic strategy is a simple belief that innovation is the catalyst for growth. And it's why we're investing in the conditions that will allow entrepreneurs and scaling firms to thrive in our country. So let me start with one of the most important examples of that work, the Tech Scaler programme. The Tech Scaler programme is a flagship example of our ambition to make Scotland one of Europe's most dynamic entrepreneurial economies. With £42 million of investment over 5 years, we're creating the conditions for Scottish founders to compete with and learn from the very best in the world. And Glasgow is playing a central role in that mission. The region is home to one of the largest concentrations of Tech Scaler members, with over 400 founders from more than 300 startups now engaged in the programme, many of whom are based in the Barclays campus, an outstanding example of corporates supporting the next generation of business. Together, those companies have raised almost £40 million in investment since joining, and they are growing in sectors where Glasgow is already strong: EdTech, MedTech and data and analytics. TechScaler is of course more than a funding stream. It is a platform, one that brings together co-working space, peer networks, mentorship and access to world-class education, including through Reforge, one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious scale-up providers. It connects founders to experienced entrepreneurs who have built and have exited successful companies. And it fosters the kind of entrepreneurial community and culture that allows innovation to flourish and talent to stay. Now, these are not abstract benefits. We are seeing the results. Today, TechScaler supports over 1,400 startups. Over a third of TechScaler founders are women, a figure well above industry norms, and 3 Scottish companies, including Glasgow's own Simple Online Healthcare, have been named in Tech Nation's Future 50, marking them out as companies with significant growth potential. Thanks to the advantages of self-government, Scotland's entrepreneurial economy is now growing much faster than the United Kingdom as a whole, with growth outpacing even some of Europe's most admired systems. TechScaler and its collaboration with Barclays and other key institutions is helping to unlock Glasgow's potential and to position the city at the forefront of global innovation. But this is just one part of a much wider strategy that is reshaping how we support innovation, scale-ups, and the next generation of high-growth firms. Because if Scotland is to fulfil its entrepreneurial potential, we need more brilliant ideas. We need the right conditions to scale them, and we need to ensure that everyone with ambition and talent can participate in that journey. But as we celebrate the success of our innovators, we must also be honest about the wider challenges that Glasgow faces. That is why we commissioned the Pathways Review, led by our Chief Entrepreneur Anna Stewart, who you'll hear from later on this morning, and from Mark Logan, to understand and address the barriers facing women in entrepreneurship. Their conclusions were clear. Startups founded by women receive just 2% of institutional investment, what they describe rightly as a denial of opportunity on an industrial scale. We're now acting on those recommendations with a programme for government commitment to invest up to £6 million to support hands-on practical efforts to widen participation, build networks and unlock the next generation of founders. This work is not only about fairness, it is also about growth. Yes, we are seeing more new businesses launched than ever before. More founders are stepping forward and more ideas are turning into impact. But as Anna Stewart has been arguing so compellingly, the challenge now is how we support them to stay in Scotland, to expand here, to export from here, and to create jobs at scale here. To guide that next phase, we asked Shane Christopherson, the former CFO of Skyscanner, to lead an independent scale-up panel, bringing together some of Scotland's most experienced entrepreneurs and investors. Their recommendations are practical and ambitious, focused on global talent, board capability, export growth, better use of the Global Scot network, and reforming startup finance. These are challenges the Scottish Government is actively working through in partnership with Anna Stewart as Chief Entrepreneur and in dialogue with industry. But it's also a moment to reflect more broadly and to be honest about where we need to go further to realise our ambitions for our economy. In a Scottish context, that need and that desire to go further can be summed up in one word: energy. This week's UK budget was a missed opportunity on energy costs. While paring back some of the increases in household bills was welcome, the reality is that families and businesses in Scotland are paying way more than they should for their energy. Scotland, as an energy exporter, as one of the biggest producers of low-cost renewables in Europe, should have significantly lower energy costs. And with significantly lower energy costs, significantly greater economic benefits and opportunities. This week I was in Ireland and the contrast could not be clearer. There, Irish governments have been able to make choices that give Ireland a competitive edge. In their case, using the lever of low corporation tax to deliver a remarkable economic transformation. An effective budget for Scotland would have seen the lever of low-cost energy pulled, giving Scottish households a real reduction in their sky-high energy costs and creating a competitive advantage for Scottish businesses, enabling them to flourish and to grow. Circumstances also that would encourage the energy-intensive high-tech industries of the future to flock to Scotland, creating a host of new opportunities, new jobs and new economic hope. That should be the scale of our ambition here in Scotland. And ambition is something we must always have for Scotland, just as I know ambition is something that all of the partners who are here today have for this city. While Glasgow has faced some very specific pressures, in particular in the wake of the pandemic, declining footfall, changing work patterns, pressures on the nighttime economy, and shifts in retail patterns, your response as a city was to step up, and as a result, we are seeing the emergence of a more diverse and resilient city centre economy. Recovery from COVID, as Susan Aitken has said, is an ongoing process, but in so many ways, including for the city's retail and hospitality sectors, we can see evidence of real progress. Like you, I'm very conscious of the new realities that we face as a nation, many of the old assumptions that no longer stand. So how do we build city economies that thrive, not just in our tech clusters that I've talked about so far, or in investment zones, but in every street, in every community, in every household? Because the truth is this: without inclusive growth, there is no sustainable growth. Without a sense of pride in community, a sense of pride in place, we cannot unlock potential. And without a deeper regional focus, we risk missing the very levers that drive real transformation. Earlier this month, Professor Sir Anton Muscatelli published his independent report on Glasgow's regional economy. His recommendations strongly reinforce many of the priorities already shaping this government's approach: the need for stronger regional capacity, greater devolution of decision-making, better commercialisation from universities, and a sharper focus on innovation and exports. It is also a reminder that cities like Glasgow, with global potential, must be at the forefront of Scotland's economic transformation, and that if we are to realise the ambition of becoming one of the world's most enterprising small economies, then Glasgow's success will be absolutely central to that journey. So let us ask ourselves, what would it take for Glasgow to become Europe's most agile and inclusive innovation capital? What would it take for the next generation of Glaswegians to grow up not just with pride in the city's past, but with confidence in the city's future? That vision cannot and should not just be written down in strategies or plans. It needs to be lived, seen and felt in the everyday life of this magnificent city. And that includes recognising the full economic power of the culture that is underpinned in this city. Whether it's hosting major events like the 2026 Commonwealth Games or Euro 2028, and hopefully with the bid submitted today as a location for the 2035 Women's World Cup, showcasing local talent through the Glasgow Film Festival or Celtic Connections, or serving as the stage for international productions from Spider-Man to The Flash. This is a city that understands the power of creativity to drive regeneration, to attract investment, and to bring people together. We see it in iconic venues like the Barrowlands, the Old Fruitmarket, and the Emirates Arena. Each of them not just spaces of performance, but engines of local pride and economic activity. And we see it in the investments we have made in refurbishing the Kelvin Hall, in supporting the National Performance Company. This cultural infrastructure is not separate from our economic ambitions, it is fundamental to our economic ambitions as well. Because thriving cities are places where creativity, commerce, and community meet together. And Glasgow continues to embody that potential, not only as a centre of business and innovation, but as a place that inspires, includes, and connects. Glasgow's potential is not hypothetical, it is real, and it has already been realised in its institutions, its entrepreneurs, and in the partnerships powering its renewal. Through investment in Clyde Gateway, we are supporting the regeneration of Glasgow's East End, tackling inequality, creating jobs, and improving outcomes for the communities that call this area home. And the results are tangible, from Eastworks Dalmarnock to the Shawfield Innovation District, from business parks to community hubs. This is about more than physical infrastructure. It is about building confidence in place. We see that again in the Govan-Partick Bridge, opened just last year. It provides an important and much welcomed physical connection between the traditional seat of learning in the West End and the many exciting new innovative industries emerging in the heart of post-industrial Govan, enabling not only the easier flow of cyclists and pedestrians, but I also hope the easier flow of ideas too into the bargain. Now, these are not isolated projects. They are part of a bigger story. So let us pause here and imagine what that future Glasgow could look like. Imagine a city where the East End is known not for what it once was, but for what it has become, a hub of clean industry, creative talent, and cutting-edge research, where high streets are alive with independent shops, local enterprise, and cultural spaces that reflect the diversity of the people who live there. Where crossing the Clyde means opportunity, not just in the city centre, but in every community that makes up this region. Where the next generation grows up, confident that they can build their best future right here. That is the kind of city economy we must build, and the kind of vision that must animate our planning, our partnerships, and our politics. Because regeneration is not just about restoring the past, it is about designing the future. And with the right investment, leadership, and collaboration, Glasgow can once again show the world what transformation looks like. And it is precisely because of this long-term, community-focused, but commercially minded regeneration that Glasgow is now a magnet for inward investment, spanning sectors from advanced manufacturing to digital tech, creative industries, and green energy into the bargain. This is not just a vote of confidence in Glasgow's infrastructure, it is a signal that international investors see this city as a place of opportunity, talent, and ambition. Two recent examples prove the point. In March, Halon Entertainment announced the creation of a new studio here in Glasgow, delivering 250 high-quality jobs and cementing the city's reputation as a global player in film, gaming, and immersive tech. And in May, Zero Avia confirmed that it would establish a hydrogen centre of excellence in Renfrewshire, driving forward the development of hydroelectric aero engines and placing this region at the heart of the clean aviation revolution. And Glasgow's fintech ecosystem is also thriving. The city is now home to more than 70 fintech firms, spanning areas such as crypto, RedTech, payments, and embedded finance, while increasingly attracting international venture capital. A powerful example of this growth story is the Financial Regulation Innovation Lab, delivered by FinTech Scotland in partnership with the Universities of Glasgow and Strathclyde, which is cementing the city's reputation as a global leader in responsible financial innovation. This growing innovation confirms Glasgow's competitive advantages, tangibles like world-class universities and colleges, a skilled workforce, international connectivity, but also those equally important intangibles, leadership, ambition, confidence, and an abounding creative energy. It reflects also something deeper, a new maturity in regional collaboration. Because while we talk about Glasgow as a city, we know it does not succeed alone. It is part of a wider city region, a connected, coordinated economic system where local authorities, industry, academia, and the third sector come together to align ambition and delivery at scale. And Glasgow City Region is showing how the regional economic model can work in Scotland. Together, you have built a mature governance structure, a city region cabinet. This model of cooperation, with light touch but effective governance structures, bringing together leaders of the region's local authorities is, to my mind, a far better approach than the imposition of so-called metro mayors. It is rooted in and respectful of our existing local government structures, and it works, helping deliver £1.3 billion of investment, which has in turn leveraged £880 million of follow-on investment that sustains thousands of jobs and has nurtured and encouraged dynamic new sectors of the economy all along the Clyde Valley. And it is precisely because of this success and the ambition shown by Glasgow and its partners that the Scottish Government is now committed to going further. We will introduce enabling legislation in the next Parliament to allow regional partnerships to seek legal status, to unlock new powers, and to design delivery models tailored to local priorities. I want our regional partnership, like Glasgow City Region, to have the opportunity to expand their strategic capacities and roles with a package of additional devolved competences available over time. On the table, powers such as skills, economic development and planning. Glasgow City Region is very much a pathfinder. A stronger Glasgow City Region should have the powers it needs to support progress on the Clyde Metro and other regional connectivity, and to enable infrastructure investments that will accelerate inclusive economic growth and speed up the transition to net zero. Because the more we empower our regions, the more we empower Scotland. Glasgow's leadership has shown what is possible. Now we must build on that momentum and extend it to every other part of the country. And to that end, I can confirm today that the Scottish Government will provide capacity funding with £400,000 available this year to support the development of new regional structures and regional economic plans. And more than a quarter of a century after the emergence of devolution to Scotland, and as we consider once again the next steps forward for our nation, it's also time for greater devolution of power within Scotland. That includes empowering Scotland's regions, because working in partnership with national government, it is our regions that are best placed to drive inclusive growth in a way that is both local and strategic. After 850 years of reinvention, this city has earned the right to aim high. And in the Old Fruitmarket, we know exactly what happens when ambition meets enterprise. So let us imagine the Glasgow of tomorrow, a Glasgow where every child, no matter their postcode, grows up with confidence in their future, because opportunity is not confined to a few streets or sectors, but harnessed across the whole of the city. A Glasgow where our world-class universities are not just centres of learning, but engines of enterprise, birthing new ideas, new technologies and new industries, where the next generation of founders is more diverse, more ambitious and more supported than ever before, where innovation is not abstract but visible in the businesses we support, the places we build and the communities that we empower, and where the city's energy, its culture, its creativity, its compassion is not only preserved but projected on a global stage. That is the Glasgow we are all working towards. And that is the journey this government is proud to walk with you. Looking around this room, I see people who will help make that vision a reality. But we will not get there by doing more of the same. This moment demands focus, it demands collaboration, and it demands ambition, equal to the challenges that we all face and the potential that we possess. So let us build on what works, let us scale what matters, and let us show once again that Glasgow does not wait for the future to happen. Glasgow makes the future happen, and the Scottish Government will be an enthusiastic partner with Glasgow on that journey. Thank you very much.
First Minister, thank you very much for this inspiring vision, centring on Glasgow's role as a city of transformation and your commitment to deepen and match the appetite of the city with progressive legislation to enable partnership to be deeper, for co-investment to be more thoroughgoing, and for the funding that you're going to put into building the capacity for regional strategies to evolve to increasingly deepen that devolution. This has been an inspiring speech, First Minister. Thank you very much. I'm going to take the unusual step of saying to everyone that we are running a few minutes behind, and I'm going to invite you to stand up and have a stretch. We're going to continue to do that, but before we do that, we thank once again the First Minister, who we know has to leave to go to other engagements now. First Minister, thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to stand up for 15 seconds and have a stretch, please do. And meanwhile, will my panel please join me on stage? Yep, you're there, Phil. Okay, that's your 15 seconds. Please sit down again. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for your commitment to this agenda and your graciousness in the face of protest. We really appreciate that. I'm going to begin now the first panel. We'll stay roughly 15 minutes behind our schedule to account for the protest, and we appreciate your patience. I want to just say to everyone, we've got 56 questions have come in on Slido. They're all fantastic questions. Thank you also to the people who've praised Councillor Aitken and others for the way that the protest was sensitively handled. We appreciate that. Just to say, there's a lot of questions there that are really for Councillor Aitken, or they concern the council or transport. I'm not going to put the wrong questions to the wrong people. They're all good questions, but we'll save some of those for later on. If you have questions that focus on tourism, connectivity, major events, and the catalytic approach of the destination economy, do send them my way, and we'll try to address them with our esteemed panel, who I'm going to introduce to you now. So firstly, on my immediate left, we have Phil Batty, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Glasgow 2026. Next to Phil, we have Eileen Crawford, Head of Conventions and Tourism at the Glasgow Convention Bureau. Next to her, Cam Jandu, the CEO of AGS Airports, and therefore the man who's in charge of Glasgow Airport. And next to him, Dominic Mackay. Dominic is the CEO of the Scottish Exhibition Campus. Please give our panel a very warm welcome. So Councillor Aitken and the First Minister talked about the destination economy. They talked about connections, conventions, tourism, and so much more. So I'm going to kick off with one question each to our panellists, and then I'm going to go to Slido and see what are the questions that you want to ask them. So Phil, starting with you, here's the obvious question. What can we expect at Glasgow 2026? What's it going to look and feel like? And how do you think it will help to grow the city's economy?
I think that, and you've heard this front and centre today, that major events are lightning rods for economic stimulation. They're opportunities to shine this global spotlight on all the activity we know is already going on. And I think, particularly for Glasgow, major events aren't new. You know, look back to the Garden Festival, European Capital of Culture, not just the Commonwealth Games in 2014, but the amazing World Championships, the UCI cycling that have been held here. So I think what you can expect next summer is another electric, exhilarating 11 days of sport, but also you can expect a huge amount of opportunity. You know, this is a major investment that happens when major events happen in a city. There's the direct spend in the hospitality sector, retail, the local economy, but also there's an opportunity to do trade with 74 nations. There's a global advert for Glasgow that's seen by billions across the world. So these are lightning rod moments, but they're also, you know, really great opportunities to celebrate what everyone in this room already knows, which is how fantastic this city already does every single event that it's put on for the last 30 years.
Fantastic. And who in the room is looking forward to the Commonwealth Games in 2026? If you are, let's see your hands.
Every single hand is definitely up.
And anybody in the room who's actually going to be competing? Is there anybody who's going to be competing? Right? Okay, nobody. Anybody in the room is going to be volunteering? Can we see you? Yes, a few hands are up. Thank you very much indeed. Great. Phil, everyone's looking forward to it. And what we're going to talk about a little bit later on is how we're going to manage the flow of people, how we're going to make sure the city thrives while the event thrives. We'll come back to that. Eileen, great to have you here. So we know Glasgow's already a world-class destination. We've heard from Susan this morning that there's going to be a new destination marketing and management organisation pulling all of this together. How will those new arrangements then help to generate greater value from investors, from visitors and others?
Thank you very much for the question, Professor. Well, I think we all know that Glasgow is a fantastic world-class destination. We've got world-class venues, world-class connectivity, and world-class events on the stage. And I suppose the challenge, the opportunity for us is to tell those that do not yet know about Glasgow as a world-class destination. And that's, I think, the opportunity that comes together with the Destination Glasgow, as Councillor Aitken launched today. We already have experts, we already have really great teams that are working in tourism and conventions, working in destination marketing and invest. So that power and that opportunity to bring these teams together to do more than the one individual teams doing by themselves is hugely powerful. And I think the First Minister made a great point when he said, build on what works and scale up what matters. And this is the city doing exactly that.
Great, fantastic. And again, we'll ask you again in a few minutes something about how Destination Glasgow will actually function. What should people expect from it as a partner, as a client, and in other things? So, Cam, you must be delighted to hear about all of these events that are happening in Glasgow, because that drives flight routes. But you've already been very successful in starting to grow the flight routes. The First Minister referred to the 2 new direct flights to North America, and the connections are really coming now. So what is making this possible? What's making the difference now? Why is the connectivity growing? And what are your next targets and why?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's a variety of answers to that, really. First of all, we have the demand here. We all know that Glasgow's always been the biggest city in Scotland. And I feel I've joined at a great time under new ownership, who acquired AGS for £1.5 billion. They wanted me to get that plug in, by the way, in January this year. But really, outside of that, it's having the demand that we've talked about. You've heard from the First Minister today, from Councillor Aitken today, everything that you'll hear in the course of the panel today, that we have a great story to tell now. And so our commercial team, whose job it is to spend time around the world, is to talk to airlines and convince them of us being the big city and having all of these great ingredients now to put a better cake together and then project that forward, especially with the tourism office. So, and just more than coincidence, you know, we were at an event in London last Tuesday, a Scottish-related event, and WestJet announced the Toronto services, and everyone was looking at their watch because they wanted to get to the pub for some reason to watch a game. And then the 4th goal was special. The 3rd goal was even more special, in my opinion. But it's a perfect time. So what we do need from everybody, and I will emphasize it in the course of what I say today, please support the flights, because over the past, when airlines have arrived, they haven't always stayed. So I think timing, events, getting coordinated is the right answer to that.
Great, that's fantastic. And Cam, just to put you on the spot, if you had a top 5 priorities for the next routes you'd like to secure, what would they be?
Tied in with the business community, you've heard the state trip, get my words mixed up. The missions to Shanghai, Singapore, India is a growing market for us, as Pakistan is as well. But even closer to home, there's a lot of opportunity with markets like Germany. We've been successful in getting Portugal, Lisbon, Faro, and 1 or 2 other destinations. And what we need to do as an airport is not just get 1 or 2 connections a week, it's increase that frequency. So, of course, new markets are very important for us and for the exhibition campus and everyone else in the city, but it's to get better frequency as well to enable better connection opportunity for business travelers. So a whole host of countries.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And later, let's talk a little bit about the metro project and why that's important for the airport. And I also want to pick up on the general point that a lot of people have made in Slido about how we're going to combine this growth with sustainability, because obviously that's going to be a really key issue for you. Dominic, coming to the SEC, I mean, it's already bursting with events. I think I've been to 4 events at the SEC in the last year. Now, obviously, I'm only here occasionally. How does bursting with events translate into growth and development for the Glasgow economy overall? What difference does it really make hosting the sort of events that you host?
Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Greg. Well, we also celebrate a bit of a birthday. So yesterday was the day 40 years ago that Her Majesty the Queen opened the Scottish Exhibition Centre, and we've now evolved into that Scottish Events Campus. And what a journey it's gone on. Adding things like the Armadillo, adding the Ovo Hydro. We've really become a centre of excellence for music events and conferences. And as a consequence of that, we've had great success. We've grown. It's difficult to imagine Glasgow without those 3 wonderful, iconic locations. And this past year, we've had the most incredible year. 2.3 million people coming through our front door. 270 events, hosting over the last number of years, everyone from Bono to Beyonce, from Obama. It's just a special place that welcomes the best into Glasgow. And I guess our challenge and our ambition is to make sure we grow and develop further. And as we contribute annually around £500 million per year to the Glasgow economy, we want to go harder for the next 40 years and grow and develop. So the contribution that we make, not just through the indirect employment of around 5,000 people, but through the promotion of Glasgow to the world and through delivering the wonderful culture to the world in lots of different ways through our fabulous facility. We're excited about doing more of that in the years to come, and we've got some really exciting and developing plans that we want to do in partnership with our colleagues across the city.
Thank you so much. It's a bit of a beguiling menu, isn't it? Bono, Beyonce or Obama. Who went to Bono? Hands up. Who went to Beyonce? Who went to Obama? What are these people doing? I mean, you lot need to get out more, I think, is probably the answer to that. One of the things we might talk about in a minute, Dominic, is how, when you have this kind of destination economy that you're really building around the SEC, how do you get the right mix between international visitors who come that sell seats on planes and spots in hotels, and regional and local visitors who come, does it provide you with a borrowed scale you wouldn't otherwise have? Now, I'm looking at the Slido, and I'm not seeing that many direct questions to this audience, but if there are some, they'll be sent to me. But there are 3 questions that are kind of underpinning what everyone is saying. So there is that question about how do we get sustainability at the same time as we get growth, and where does sustainability, where does inclusion fit in these growth plans? There's a lot of questions about the city centre, and I think we should just talk a little bit about how the city centre relates to what you're doing. And there's also some questions in here about heritage buildings and how we're using them. So what I'm going to say to our panel is, please pick up on the question I was pitching to you at the start a little bit. So, when we're talking about the Commonwealth Games, how are we going to actually manage it? But give us some insight about inclusion or sustainability or the city centre or heritage and other things, and we'll go around again that way.
So I think cities are always changing, and I think that's something that we maybe don't celebrate enough. So when I moved to the city at the beginning of the year and was looking where to live, the city centre is where I've chosen to call home. And I think as you walk around the city centre, you do see a lot of development. And I think, yes, for maybe like an afternoon or a day, that's slightly inconvenient. But when you think about what that feels in a year's time or 2 years' time or 5 years' time, those are the investments that we need to enable the city to continue to host more events, to continue to have more public spaces which we can use in different ways that reflect the ways events are changing, transport infrastructure that's continuing to grow and move with how the consumer moves between events now that they are more conscious about sustainability and travel. So I think you can't have long-term gain without some short-term pain. And I think one of the things that we're definitely trying to do differently with this Commonwealth Games is, it is very important to note that Glasgow and Scotland stepped in at 18 months' notice to put a Commonwealth Games on. Well, actually, that's created a huge opportunity to design the event for the city. So to pick sports that celebrate what are national venues, the Velodrome, the Arena, Tollcross International Swimming Centre. These are fantastic assets for Glasgow. They're also fantastic assets for the whole of Scotland that are based here, along with the facilities at the SEC that enable us to put 6 sports on one campus. So what this is forcing us to do that's a positive is think differently. And in doing that, we've been able to be sustainability first. We're not building new venues. We're putting 90% less temporary infrastructure in. We're working with First Group on 80% EV vehicles. Glasgow 2014 had 1,400 diesel cars. We've got 100 EV cars for this Commonwealth Games. So I think change is difficult, change is scary, change is unusual, but these games are going to be the example of how, if you grasp that change and you lean into a changing city and you use the spaces in whatever form they are now, you can still put on a brilliant event that actually fits in the pocket of a city rather than works against the fabric and movement of a city.
Brilliant. Very well said, Phil. Thank you very much. So, Eileen, tell us a little bit about what it will be like to work with Destination Glasgow. What character will this organisation have? And then perhaps you could pick up on the heritage and the city centre issues that have been raised.
Yeah, I'd actually like to pick up on sustainability as well, Professor,
Go
if that's
ahead.
okay, because I think it's really important,
Yeah.
especially being here representing tourism and events, that we have to recognise that tension, that sustainability with people travelling has to be recognised. But I'm really proud to say that Glasgow has done its bit. We were the very first city in the UK to join the Global Destination Sustainability Index back in 2016. And currently, we are 5th in the world of over 100 tourism and event cities. And the only other cities above us are Nordic. And I think that says a lot about what the city has done, about reducing its own carbon emissions, about how the industry, so all of you working in hotels and restaurants with your green accreditation, that's moved us up that index, and also what the teams have done across the city to look at sustainability and promote that so well. So I do think we have to own that in tourism and events, and also celebrate where we're all doing really well. And picking up on heritage, that as well is hugely important. And this is where this new Destination Glasgow team can help amplify that voice. We know through surveys, visitor surveys, that the reasons people come to Glasgow is they love the museums, they love the arts and the culture, and they love our heritage buildings. We all know we're sitting in one. Isn't this amazingly Glaswegian? It is absolutely gorgeous. And we all know that that attracts visitors, and it's what's unique about us. So the voice that can be amplified through Destination Glasgow, reaching audiences, national, international, audiences for investment, audiences for national tourism, international tourism, for conferences and events. This is an amazing opportunity to amplify that voice and bring in more business, but doing it sustainably and doing it responsibly is really important.
Thank you very much indeed. And just as you were speaking, Eileen, two questions popped up here. One is really about how does the sustainability credentials that you've just described, how does that help you to attract the right events? It might be good to say something a little bit more about that. And then how focused are we on making sure that local citizens benefit when these events come to town? There's 5 or 6 questions in that space.
Sure. Picking up on one of the figures that Councillor Aitken mentioned today, local people benefit from tourism and events because 37,000 of us work in that sector. And that's why we are in the State of the Economy Conference, because we are really important to the city's economy, and that means jobs. And it means a great place to work, a great place to meet, a great place to study. All of those things include a great place to visit. So hopefully everyone benefits from the work that we can do to bring in that extra income through the visitor pound.
Great, thank you very much.
A question about sustainability.
Yes, please.
So I think those that work with clients specifically will have seen over recent years that when asked to present either a case for a conference or an event, the clients will always ask for sustainability credentials. The hotels in the room will know that too. The venues in the room will know that too. You have to prove your credentials. If you can't prove your credentials to bring in these major events, they're not going to come. They don't want to be embarrassed by going to a destination that doesn't have those credentials. So that's why we take it so seriously, because we genuinely win business with the sustainable credentials that the city has.
Great, thank you very much
Can I
indeed.
just build on that just a little bit?
Sure.
It's such an important point, which is, whilst the city's projecting so wonderfully through its venues and through its activities, we also need to live and breathe that we invest in those facilities appropriately as well. So we're really proud on behalf of Glasgow to achieve the first ever arena in the world as a green status for the arena, and we just renewed that last week for the 2nd year running. So not only are we talking about it, but we're actively acting on that sort of commitment that we collectively made during COP when we hosted it.
Yes, and now you're hosting huge events about energy, but you are the most sustainable campus anywhere in Europe, I understood. So, fantastic. Just before we come to Cam, Phil, there's a very poignant question here about ticket prices for Commonwealth Game events. And somebody in the room basically saying, can we do anything to make sure that it's affordable to get into the events, but also that the public transport is affordable to get to and from them during the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, it's really important that when you are pricing any event that you're really balancing the need to be able to fund the event. So this particular edition of the Commonwealth Games, it has no taxpayer funding going into it at all. So you do need to kind of ensure that for athletes to be able to compete on the field of play to the best of their ability, for the spectators to have an incredible experience, that you can resource and fund a high quality event, because that's part of the reputation. And I think, you know, it's important to say the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow is not for profit. So this is all about investing in the event itself. But when we looked at ticket prices, we wanted to make sure there was a broad range of ticket prices. So we've got tickets for all of the qualifiers from £17, tickets for all the medal events from £26, but we've also got kind of prime medal events at £150. And that reflects that actually sporting events, music events, hospitality events, you know, they do need to be sustainable financially as events on an onward basis. What we've seen is, you know, we went on sale with tickets. Partly what you can do is prioritize different groups. So we went to Glasgow first, we then went to Scotland second, we then went to anyone who'd kind of expressed an interest in a particular sport throughout the UK and further afield. And those are the measures that as an event organizer you can take. And, you know, what I can say here now is we've been on sale for about a month, and there's tickets sold for every sport, for every session, at every price point. There is every single ward in Glasgow has spectators who are coming to the whole range of sports there. And that, you know, these are industries that need to thrive, but they are industries that also need to act responsibly. So that's the balance that we definitely took into consideration when going on sale with our event.
Thank you very much. Very, very clear. Cam, so two key questions for you. How do we grow our aviation and connections, but also address our sustainability imperative? And then what kind of surface transport solutions are really needed? And is the Metro project the answer?
Thank you. So with the first one, let's start with what's within our control as airports. So we're part of an association called ACI, Airports Council International, several hundred airports around the world, and they introduce their own carbon accreditation schemes, which takes care of a lot of the things that we can, from reducing your paper wastage, making sure you're disposing of waste responsibly, and also the electrification of vehicles on your site. So, for example, buses that we have at the airports that we operate to get passengers to and from the planes, they're all becoming electric through a process of electrification. So there's a lot that we're doing, and we're very proud to announce that we've got the highest possible level of accreditation there in terms of AGS as a group. So all three airports have done as much as they can. We've got a target of 2030 to get to net zero, but that's can only be achieved with a whole host of other factors, most of which is going to be driven by the airlines. And just one fact, you can fact check it please and get me wrong if I make it up. Since 2019, there's actually more aircraft flying in the world than there were pre-pandemic, but utilizing 90% less emissions. So that just goes to show just the progress that aircraft technology has taken, and which Boeing and Airbus and all the other manufacturers around the world, they're fundamentally focusing on it from an aircraft weight composition perspective, but also the engine manufacturers as well. So the two recent announcements, which several people have mentioned, to New York and Canada, will be operated on MAX narrow-body aircraft, and the only reason that they can do that is because the weight of the aircraft is less, the fuel efficiency is much less as well. So there's a lot that the industry is doing to get us there, and having two 20-something-year-old kids, they're of a generation, when they hear the word aviation, they say it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. I agree, every 1% of emission we should be doing something about, but the industry is going a long way to move in the right direction from that perspective. Coming to your second question, I've been here 10 months, and I've heard from many of my fellow Glaswegians now, and I live here very proudly, that we do need a connection to the airport. Initially, my thoughts went for passenger convenience as well, and it's fundamentally important for that, because with these new routes coming, we need to keep them here. And some of the airlines that did operate here previously and are now coming back, and they said one of the reasons we left is because surface accessibility was not very good. Now, as an airport, we're fully behind Clyde Metro. We've met with all of the policymakers, with the people in charge of the program itself, and expressed our views that we're ready. Clyde Metro will offer a really, really wonderful light rail solution to get to the airport, not just from the city centre, but especially for the surrounding communities, because we need to get passengers and staff to the airport responsibly and safely, because having a 24/7 environment, effectively, you have shift work, and getting people there in the winter, let alone in the summer at 4 a.m., takes some effort. So we're fully supporting the Clyde Metro, and of course working with not just the city, but also with Scottish Government as well, and anyone with a policy vote in that to get that done sooner rather than later.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And I know it's been a subject at this conference for many years. How do we get the right connectivity? And it's great that we've got the project that everyone's backing. Dominic, a couple of questions have come up here for you. One of them says you're hosting the most amazing events at the campus, but are we promoting them well enough? Are we really communicating what's happening? And another question is saying, how is it that you connect when an international conference or congress comes to the campus? How do you connect with local business, with regional institutions, with the universities? What does that look and feel like?
Yeah, look, it's a great point. Having spent a lot of time outside of Glasgow travelling and working over my career, it's wonderful to be back. And I'm learning so much about the vibrancy and the size and the scale of the SEC as a campus. So we've got a bit of a job to do to tell that story. We're brilliant actually at telling that story internationally, but we sometimes forget to tell that story really effectively domestically. And I think, as Aileen was mentioning a moment ago there, the direct marketing organisations that's being established will do a great role in helping us promote all the wonderful things that are happening across Glasgow, both to Glaswegians and to Scots, but also to the world. And we've got a role to play in helping arm them with the great information and help them to amplify that, because genuinely Glasgow is doing something special and unique. Our campus in the greatest city in the world is doing incredible work every single day, bringing people together, whether it's at conferences or live events, and everyone leaves with a special emotion, because it's a special place to come and do business or watch an event, and we're very proud of that, so we're very keen to talk about that effectively. The second point is, how do we interact with the business community and academia in Scotland? Well, to attract those international conferences, to attract those international events, we absolutely need to partner, and we do partner in very successfully with whether it's a convention bureau, whether it's Glasgow University, Strathclyde University, or colleges, because sometimes it takes 4, 5, 6 years for a big conference or a big exhibition to come from America or to come to Europe, and that requires local expertise to work on that over a number of months and years. So not only do we contribute massively to the economic impact of Glasgow PLC and its citizens, but we're really proud to make sure we've got direct, strong connections with all the universities across Glasgow and indeed Scotland.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Now I'm going to ask a last question to close the panel. And really what I want you to talk about is, what's one milestone for you that will be the indicator that we're really making the kind of progress that Councillor Aitken and the First Minister spoke about at the beginning of the conference, that transformation, that momentum. What's the milestone you're looking for in the next 12 months that will tell you we're going in the right direction? I'm going to start with you, Dom.
I think I build on the comments that were made by the First Minister and the leader, ambition. And the milestone for us as a campus, from an ambitions point of view, is we've got about 60% of our land that we currently don't develop, we don't use, we don't make any significant economic return from. So we'd love to develop a great scheme with the city, with our partners, to transform the whole campus and work with the markets to make sure that we can do something really special for the people of Glasgow.
Great, thank you very much. So more optimum use of your space and your capacity. Pam, what's your milestone?
I believe, and I think it's probably relevant for us all, is to have a better, stronger brand book that encapsulates everything that we're doing in this city. So I heard, if we didn't hear it once, we heard it several times today, Glasgow is the second biggest city for FDI in the UK. Now, other than the several people who mentioned this or heard it in this room, I'm not sure so many people around the world know that. We need to get better at that. We need to talk about the facilities and the events and everything in a much better fashion. We are doing our job as AGS, investing £300 million in upgrading the facilities at Glasgow, because we believe a city of this size and scale, with everything that's going on with the Commonwealth Games, deserves to have a better platform of an airport. So this is why we're going through transformation. So short answer, a better brand book that we can all use around the world, say, these are 10 reasons why Glasgow is relevant, and it's our time now.
Right, thank you very much. So that brand book is going to be key. Eileen, what's your milestone?
Well, I'm very glad that the city's decided to bring on board Destination Glasgow, because that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point, to be able to get that brand book, to be able to understand our audiences, understand our key messages, and amplify that opportunity to tell people how fantastic Glasgow is, and bring that invest message together with the visit message, together with the meet, and even the study and live. You know, just tell the world how great we are.
And what's the key moment or day in the launch of Destination Glasgow? When are people going to be able to meet Destination Glasgow?
Well, we are still in our kind of separate roles. The teams are still there. It's the same teams, don't worry. They're still doing the day job very well, I can say. So the teams from Destination Marketing and from Convention Bureau move into new offices with Invest Glasgow from the 14th of December. So settling and meeting each other, but as I say, the day job still goes on. So it's the opportunity of bringing that together that we'll see, and we can share that when we meet next year.
Great, okay, so sometime next year, and that will link with the punchy brand book that Cam's talking about. And Phil, let's come to you. What's your milestone? Obviously, there'll be an opening ceremony, but there must be another milestone before that.
I think, well, I was going to say in 237 days' time, 26 minutes past 8 p.m, we'll be, you know, doing the opening ceremony for the Commonwealth Games. And I think for me, the milestone is actually probably about, we will all be clear on the story we want to project to the world at that moment. I think there's this unique moment, and it builds exactly with what our wider panel have said of, we told a fantastic story 11, 12 years ago. There's now an opportunity to tell a new, contemporary, forward-facing version of that story, with 3,000 athletes living in the city centre, in our hotels, experiencing everything we've got to offer. So I think for me, it's probably those couple of days before, when the first athlete arrives in the city and has that first experience of Glasgow, and the fact that we all feel we're telling one story with one voice, with one energy, and one momentous kind of forward projecting moment. That's probably it. But yeah, 237 days' time is definitely.
And did you say 8:23 in the evening?
It's 8:26, 26 minutes past 8.
8:26 in the evening.
I'll be deep breath at that moment.
Yeah. Well, and then we'll give you a pat on the back. 3,000
Should
athletes.
probably wait till the 3rd of August for that. There's 11 days in between, sadly.
3,000 athletes. How many journalists come with?
Like over 1,000 journalists from over 140 nations come. And so it's not just the Commonwealth nations, it is all the other markets we've talked about, America, China, you know, nations that want to talk about a major event at a moment in time. So this is the world watching for 11 days, and it's on all of us to make the most of that opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to join me in thanking Phil Batty, Eileen Crawford, Cam Jandu, and Dominic Mackay. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Now, it's a great honour to introduce our third keynote speaker of the morning, and we're shifting our attention towards entrepreneurship, business growth, and the things that the First Minister talked about, the scale-up imperative and how that's going to work. And no better person to talk to us about this than the Chief Entrepreneur for the Scottish Government, Anna Stewart.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute honour to be here. Brilliant listening to the energised atmosphere that's in this amazing venue. I think last time I was here once before, and it was 2 years ago for the Converge Awards. And I remember distinctly there was 5 or 6 fantastic finalists from across the Glasgow universities. And it feels the same here, that we are in a room full of energy, which is really driving change for Scotland. And Glasgow, for me, is a bit like a second home. I have to say, when I was young, I was stuck to the east coast of Scotland and North Fife out in the sticks. And it was only about 8 years ago when I exited my business, having started it as a teenager and as a student, and I took on my first non-exec role, which was actually at the Scottish FA as the first female board member. And aside from the fact that I realised it's a lot wetter in Glasgow, I also realised how passionate and how much ambition there is in the city. But it also has highlighted to me how much change there has been in those 8 years, not just, you know, qualifying for 2 Euros and finally the World Cup, but actually the ecosystem. As a founder myself, you know, the ecosystem is buzzing here compared to any part of Scotland elsewhere. And I think that we can learn a lot from what's going on in Glasgow and try to replicate that across the rest of the country. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I'm down here almost every week, if not twice a week. And this week alone, I got to experience that amazing energy. I was at Glasgow University hearing about the fantastic infrastructure, the ambitious infrastructure plans and projects that are going on there. You know, making sure that spin-outs are feeding the funnel for our scale-ups. Barclays Eagle Labs, you know, not very long in Glasgow, but absolutely a critical part of it now, and creating a great environment for our early stage founders. Strathclyde's Inspire programme, another amazing event, programme that goes on throughout the year and has been quite established for some years. I was also at the ISPE conference at Strathclyde and again met some amazing founders and ecosystem builders that are changing the complexion for Scotland. And of course I was at the Dealmakers Awards, which was full of about 500 organisations all celebrating our amazing investments and our amazing scale-ups and startups that are coming out of Scotland. And that was all happening in Glasgow, so I think I might just move here, really. That might be the best option. And of course, the last thing I did was get to the game at Hampden. I don't know how many, nobody was answering yes to things, so how many of you made it to the game a week and a half ago? Is that it? I thought the whole of Glasgow would be there. It felt like it. There was an earthquake, apparently. So, but again, creating that buzz, that energy, that passion and that ambition, it feels very similar in the way it's been paralleled and what's happened in Glasgow for the last 8 years. And there's companies that, again, I know about as an investor myself and investing in entrepreneurship, not just building a business, but actually investing in organisations in Scotland. Glasgow can be proud of some of the most exciting, innovative companies that are coming out of Scotland, including Discover, Enough Foods, Celesta Bio, Microplate DX and NAMI Surgical, all amazing spin-outs that are born and seeded in Glasgow universities. So look, I'm an entrepreneur and I firmly believe that entrepreneurship is the lifeblood of our economy. I mean, I've lived and breathed it from the age of 19, and I know and I can see that it drives productivity, employment, innovation, and ultimately economic growth. I am absolutely convinced that if we get this right, it will actually transform our economy and make us lead, certainly in Europe. We need to be ambitious about that as well. Scotland is very often understated in its achievements, as it's historically we've always been like that. But we need to start shouting about how good we are at entrepreneurship and the businesses that we have growing and scaling, and our amazing founders that are doing that. But we need to be ambitious about our plans. And I've set out 3 simple priorities that I really hope that the country and the ecosystem builders and the key stakeholders and investors will get behind, because we do need to focus on those 3 things if we want to take the next step forward to growth. First of all, the first thing we need to do, and as I say, my first few weeks in post, it was pretty obvious to me that we don't really have our finger on the pulse of the founders. As one foot inside, or one toe inside the tent, it was obvious to me that whilst we thought we think we're doing what they need, we are not really hearing their voices clearly enough. We need the entrepreneurial voice in the room at all times. So we must make sure that we collaborate and provide a much better environment for collaboration and alignment that helps fuel our startups and our scale-ups, and even our pre-starts. So one of those elements that we're going to take forward is create Scotland's largest ever national survey, but do it slightly differently. Let's actually talk to the founders, but rather than get one organisation to do it, we're actually partnering with a number of private sector and public sector organisations to reach those founders so we can hear what they need, not what we think they need, but what they need. And we can help them do that by making sure we get that information and then using it to form and shape the things that we need to do and where we need to put our money and our investment, because we know we have to be smart with that. We do not have the deepest pockets, and the economies globally are not going to turn that around overnight, as we've seen in the budget yesterday. But just to give you some stats as well, I mean, Scotland has 2,900 scale-ups. And one of the things that really shocks me is how few people know about those scale-ups. If I asked several people, like at the beginning of this tenure that I've 7 months into, it's quite incredible how few people know the scale-ups that are out there. We heard of Simple Online Pharmacy, an amazing scale-up in Scotland. Has anybody ever heard of Define? 1? 3, right, well, Define is actually the UK, according to Sunday Times Top 100 Scale-Ups, fastest growing scale-up in the UK is #1, and it is in Glasgow. It's right on your doorstep. And I think that tells me a lot about what we could be doing and the opportunities we could be taking to make sure we hear them, we see them, and we actually acknowledge these amazing scale-ups and founders that are already in this country. We need to actually make sure we embrace them and wrap our hands around, arms around them to make sure we give them everything they need to scale and to keep Scotland as their HQ. If we don't know who they are and we don't know what they want, then we're not going to be able to achieve that. Another company, not in the deep tech clusters or anything like that, but another company. Have you ever heard of Vive? Oh, there's actually more. So you've performed better than the Edinburgh team here. They got like 1 in the room last time I did this talk. Again, another amazingly promising scale-up from a female founder that didn't go through the university process and scaled through her own ambition and creativity, and is in the health and beauty sector, which is one of the fastest growing economies in the world and one of the biggest invested now. So we need to nurture those companies as well as the ones that we know about, the high innovation ones that are out there. We have so much talent in Scotland, global talent. We actually need to see them so we can actually make sure that others can follow and that we do actually believe, so we can see that there's stuff out there, so we believe we can do it. The second priority is that we absolutely have to move our focus. We are doing a really, I mean, nothing to do with me, but you know, my predecessor, Mark Logan, and Scottish Government identified that we needed to completely overhaul our startup process, or get more startups coming into the system. If you don't have startups, you don't have a funnel to create scale-ups. So we needed to recognise that, and that's what's happened in the last 5 years. And today we're one of the highest growth rates of startups in Europe. We are the most successful or fastest growth rate in the UK, and we're like double what Sweden is right now. So we are doing the right things there, and we've got ourselves at the table, or forgive the pun, we're in the game, we're on the pitch. And what we can't do is let an own goal happen, because we're standing there and we're currently taking these amazing startups to a stage that they can, at the cliff edge, where they need the bridge to get to the next stage, and then that further bridge again. And we're not really geared to do that properly because we haven't got fully coherent strategy. We're good in parts, but it's quite clear that scale-ups is our weakest point. So we absolutely need to focus on how we do scale up better. And we've seen a report from Shane Christophin, we've seen reports from the Scale Up Institute, and the huge potential for Scotland is we are delivering some really great companies. So if we just find the little suite of services, it's not all about investment, it's actually finding services that will help them. And I'm absolutely certain we know that Glasgow is one of the leading players. In fact, I think in 2023, 4 out of the 10 fastest growing companies in Scotland were coming out of the city of Glasgow. So again, we need to learn from that and see how to make sure we apply that elsewhere around the country. The other thing about it is that we have to follow our founders. As an investor, I'm an investor as well. I've come back to Scotland, having done my stint in the US after my company was sold to an American NASDAQ company. And I loved coming back. But what I realized is when I started investing, that the way the system works right now in policy is geared around, you know, getting these startups moving, and then it's very disjointed. We're not connected to each stage of the founder's journey. And we are ultimately investors in people. It's people that are creating these innovations, and it's people that we need to keep investing in. And we need to therefore follow them right through their journey. Just as any good, sensible investor would, we're putting all our money up front and then not following that investment to the next round or the next round is incredibly high risk. And it means that we take the hit while many other economies and investment funds will reap the benefits of all our hard work. So we need to follow those founders right through to hyperscale. I mean, I think the other thing to highlight as well is that we talk about unicorns an awful lot. You know, Estonia is delivering X unicorns. You know, France is doing Y unicorns. We need to be careful. What we need to do is create something that would get us higher growth companies. If we do that, then all manner of scale can happen. But whether it's, you know, 50 more companies getting to 500 million, or 500 companies getting to 50 million, or just one company getting to 1 billion, we absolutely need to be laser focused on creating the services that allow us to create the stepping stones. You will never be able to deliver a billion market cap company if you do not have a strategy and all the right pieces of the jigsaw to turbocharge and accelerate their growth. So thirdly, we just need to track better. It's incredible how we do not seem to be able to quite understand how and where our scale-ups are, who they are, and how we are tracking performance, not just of those founders and those scale-ups and startups, but actually programs that the Scottish Government have put a lot of money into and doing it very well. There's some brilliant programs across Scotland, but there's a lot of programs, and it's trying to make sure they're joined up and that we know what good looks like and what isn't good, because we need to track that in order to be agile and make sure we're putting money in the right places. And again, that means that we need to start tracking and capturing data and seeing what's actually working and what's not working, and be much more focused on that and make sure it delivers a return on investment on our public purse, on our public's money, because that money is going towards those organisations or those programmes. So we want to see results over time and see the trends that it's delivering. I have to say, it was really encouraging to hear the First Minister talking about his commitment to entrepreneurship. But, you know, growth and an economy and growth in general, as we know, is a team sport, is a team effort. So I really want to make sure that you all get aligned and are backing what I'm trying to do as a conduit to make sure government hear and don't take their foot off the pedal on entrepreneurship. If you stop that, we will lose so much ground. So getting everybody to get behind this and these 3 priorities and work with me. Please pick up the phone to me and tell me what it is you think needs to get done. I am all ears, because I just want us to love our founders and make sure they succeed. But being an entrepreneur has its pitfalls. One is that you're eternally optimistic. So the amount of people have said to me, this won't be possible, I have to challenge them. I mean, that's like red rag to a bull. It's a brilliant challenge for us to then confound that and actually turn that around. So it is enlightening, I have to be honest. It's been very enlightening being in my post for 7 months. It's not what I expected, but it has been enlightening, and it's also been exciting. There's some really exciting things that are going on in government, and I didn't expect to see a lot of that. Some of it has been brilliantly executed, some of it hasn't. I have to say, in equal measure, it's exasperating. Trying to get anything done when you're an entrepreneur in government is like, going through mud, which is quickly drying and sinking. So you have to kind of be agile and weave your way and come up with creative ways to try and make sure that things actually are happening, and that the voice of our founders and our ecosystem builders and our key stakeholders is actually hitting the right notes and resonating properly with the right people in government. But the other thing I would say that's been really satisfying and humbling is that London, I am now down in London as well, equally amount, maybe I was in London 3 times in the last 14 days. And this is because I want to make sure we're seen and heard, not just in Scottish government, but in UK government, because a lot of the decision making down there has a big impact on what we can do up here. But what I would say is, I was asked to speak at the Scale Up Institute. I'm attending a Downing Street event next week. These are things that we know, and I know the reason I'm being invited is because they're looking at Scotland and they're pricking up their ears every time the name is mentioned, the country is mentioned, because they see the things that are going on up here, and there is a palpable excitement and energy about what is going on up here. So I believe, though, that actions, of course, speak louder than words, so it's fantastic to have that buzz and that noise around what we're doing up here, because I believe it's real. But we want to actually see actions happening, and that's number one on my list. I want you to help me make sure that there is action being taken and government are following through on the commitments and the will that they appear to have to do this. I suppose I was going to sort of summarise as well that growth, and a famous quote from an amazing CEO, female CEO of IBM, said that growth and comfort just do not coexist. So we all know that it's a really difficult thing to achieve, and it takes bravery and patience. You know, our founders, people seem to think this is an overnight success and why, you know, it's going to happen in 1 year. You know, the average is like 10 to 15 years before you start to see growth. You know, Skyscanner were turning over less than 4 million a year for the first 4, or less than 1 million a year for the first 4 years of their life. So we have to look at things in the long term and make sure that the decisions we make now, we need to make them now, because they're going to affect us not just in 2 years' time, they're going to affect us in 5 years' time. So if we don't do these things today, we will be paying the penalty for not doing them, because it takes a long time for this ship to turn around and turn it into the speedboat that we want it to be. So sort of summarising and trying not to have too many corny analogies, I'm kind of comparing them to the 4 goals of Scotland World Cup. If any of you were there, I never had a hug from a First Minister before, but I mean, he was hugging everyone on Tuesday, and you know, most of the people are 6'4", so I was just sort of down in the midriff getting hugged right, left and centre. But you know, the ambition and the belief that Steve Clarke's generated in that team, you know, we want that to happen in Scotland, and if we, in our economy and in an entrepreneurial ecosystem. So if I put the 4 goals against each plan, I mean, I'd like to think McTominay's amazing overhead kick was basically our startup ecosystem, the actual achievement that we've done. That, I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk, because it has to be maintained and there's a lot of improvements to be made. But Scotland is now doing really well in that space, and we're, you know, churning out startups, and we need to make sure they've got somewhere to go next, a pathway next. I kind of think Shankland's goal is about maintaining it. It's just, that was a straightforward goal, a tap-in. We want more of those. It's so difficult to get an overhead kick right every time. We need those straightforward goals. And we need to have that ambition to say this should be business as usual for us, that we're delivering great startups and we're creating these bridges to the next stage of the journey. The third one is more about us looking ahead, being creative. That was probably the most creative goal. Weaving its way amongst the obstacles and challenges, it's still got into the back of the net. And I think that is, again, something we need to be thinking of and doing. So when we get these surveys back, when we drive some of the other initiatives and ambitions that I have set out to government that I hope they will deliver, it's about making sure that we don't take our foot off the pedal and that we have creative thinkers around the room and founders around the room when we're making those decisions. And then finally, I mean, the Kenny McLean goal is perfect, is it not, to sort of say, we just need to go for it. I mean, halfway line, nobody thought, it was only about 2 seconds before he looked up, everybody thought, can we do this? Can we actually do this? Well, I absolutely believe we can. And I think that the McLean effect will be that we just need to look up further away from where we are now, not right in front of us, and think about the bigger goal to be the UK's, the European leader in making sure that entrepreneurship is delivering on all levels, and that Scotland is HQ for that, not just for the Scots, but for people coming into Scotland to start a business. So thank you very much for listening.
Anna. Thank you very much, Anna. I think people all want those 4 goals. If you'd be happy to sit there, that would be amazing. Having that scale-up potential is going to be something we'll come back to in a minute. But thank you very much for those really illuminating remarks. We're going into our final panel where we'll take about 30 minutes. And I want to invite Bailey Adeoti to come and sit here next to Anna. Next to her, I'd like to have Ian Watson, the lead director from the National Wealth Fund. And next to Ian, Councillor Aitken, please come and join us. And once they're here on the stage, Bailey, please come and have a sit here. Bailey's the entrepreneur in residence at Glasgow Clyde College. And Ian, I've just introduced to you. Councillor Aitken needs no further introduction. I'm going to ask you now to warmly welcome our final panel. Let's give them a welcome. So the good news is I've had time to actually flick through the 198 questions that have been sent by the people in the room. And many of them are on these topics of enterprise, investment, technology, startups, scale-ups, and other things. And Susan, there's only 79 questions for you, so we'll be okay. But I'm gonna line those up for you in a moment. Let's just kick off with a quick question to everyone, then we'll get immediately into the questions from the room. So Bailey, lovely to see you here again. So how well do you think Glasgow is doing in producing new businesses, and who are the new entrepreneurs, and what inspires them?
Thank you. Over the past year or so, I've been fortunate to be in the position to see, I guess, have an oversight of what Glasgow's doing. I've recently taken up a role as an entrepreneurial champion across the 6 colleges, and just even going into the colleges to see the partnership between the 6 colleges through the colleges' local innovation centres and seeing how they're partnering with industries. Colleges are really agile. They're responding to the needs of society and community. And most recently, in just after the summer, we also recognise that in Glasgow, there's been an increase in social enterprises. So Glasgow, in Scotland, there's 6,000 social enterprises, of which 1,000 are in the Glasgow City region, responding to the societal needs, responding to the impact of poverty and other things. And they're starting without even entrepreneurs just start things, Anna, and social entrepreneurs are like that. They see a need. Susan's in the house today, and she's responding to the housing need, and we're seeing that really, really responsively. So the entrepreneurs that are in Glasgow right now, new, diverse, and they're doing really, really exciting things. And I think the more we can support the entrepreneurs, the more that scale-up pipeline can be supported, and just, yeah, very exciting things so far.
Great, Bailey, thank you very much. And you've brilliantly picked up on 2 points I was going to put in the room. One about social enterprise, because there are a lot of social enterprises in Glasgow. We'll come back to all of that. And also how we use enterprise to tackle poverty, which is obviously a really key issue. Anna, you gave us a really clear picture of Scotland's progress as a kind of enterprise hub in an increasingly entrepreneurial world. But could you say just a little bit about Glasgow's role in that? What do you think Glasgow, as the largest metropolitan economy in Scotland and the one that's diversified in the ways of, what can it really contribute to Scotland's entrepreneurship levels? And what does Scotland and the UK government need to do to help enterprises in Glasgow?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's lots to take from that. But I think that, you know, historically, Edinburgh, I mean, remember, I'm not from Edinburgh either, I'm from north of that, but Edinburgh is like traditionally the heartland of entrepreneurship. That's what people would have thought. But Glasgow is actually making its mark as an exemplar, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of how to create a connected ecosystem that creates those pathways and connections and collaborations that I don't think exists elsewhere. And I don't actually think it exists elsewhere in England so obviously either in the cities. So I would be saying that we need to be shining light in Glasgow, and I want to be learning how well that ecosystem is working together. There's so many elements and there's so many different stakeholders, but there is, I'd call it a murmuration of different organisations that are aligning and working together to deliver better outcomes.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Ian, National Wealth Fund is obviously very involved in Scotland, not just in other parts of the United Kingdom. So what do you see as being the important investment priorities in the Glasgow economy, and how can the National Wealth Fund really support and help drive that needed investment?
Good question. So you can probably tell by my accent I'm not Glaswegian, but it's great to be here. and you're doing great things. What I will do is just spend 30 seconds talking about the National Wealth Fund, because people talk about it and people say, well, who are they? Our comms and marketing team do a great job, but not many people know. So, owned by UK Gov, we've been going for 4 years. UK government uses us as a policy bank to help with the missions of growth in terms of jobs and the transition to net zero. So that's at the heart of everything that we do. They've endowed us with £27 billion, which we've invested, or we are investing. In the last 4 years, we've invested roughly £6.5 billion of that over 60 deals and created roughly 64,000 jobs. So, you know, really working fast, big mission, based in Leeds and back in Scotland all the time, and we're growing. In terms of the priorities for Glasgow, so I think having the city deal for the last 10 years really, really helped with over roughly £1 billion of investment which they made. But when we started to work with them, Suzanne Miller, Kevin Rush and the team there really welcomed us. And they had a team. So compared to the 3 other city regions around the UK, which we were asked to work with, Glasgow were right at the forefront with a team ready to go. And in the first week, I had a document over like 100 pages long of all the stuff which they want to do. So the scale is huge. What we then did was work with them and to try to distill that down to get what are the really important things where we can actually work with them and make a difference. And I think there's a number of them being talked about over the course of the morning. So the advanced manufacturing zone, which already has something like 160 million from the UK Gov, how can we basically accelerate that? And what can we do with other parts of government where there's blockers to move that forward? On the metro, I mean, it's been talked about for a long time, but again, we are working with other cities around the UK, figuring out what the blockers are and how we can bring our capital, but also being able to crowd in from the pension funds, because it's going to be huge, so it's going to need a lot of capital. Thirdly, we've talked about what the city are doing in terms of sustainability. So huge ambitions for a 10 billion decarbonisation fund with Mary Kerr. So again, starting to look at that, how we can underpin that. An example is that we've worked with London, put 190 million in there for their fund, and then they build on top of that. So, really again, looking at how we can do that. Fourthly, on the regeneration front, working with the Clyde Gateway team. So again, all the key things that we've talked about, but what we're trying to bring is a combination of advisory, because we can do that, but also bringing the capital we've got to bear and to crowd in, in a structured way. Because in the past, there's been so many cities we've seen, I think, that have gone to UK Reef or gone to MIPIN, and the brochures are lovely, but there's nothing to underpin that, and the pension funds, really, find that hard. So how we can structure it and use that, and some of the investments which you're doing just now with SNIB, etc., good examples, and that is, really good for the markets because they can see that you're capable of doing it.
And does that mean that you're using your finance to help make the whole project more investable or more bankable by others, or are you taking whole projects and just financing them wholesale?
Depends upon the size. So the 10 billion for either the fund or the metro, that's what it's going to cost. We won't be able to do all that, but we can underpin it or we can wrap some of the pension funds on some smaller scale stuff. So we have made pretty large, sort of investments also. So we've invested not just in the cities, but into some of the companies. So into Pulpex, which is one of the sort of companies that's hyper growth next to Glasgow, we put £40 million worth of equity in there alongside SNIB. So it's a combination.
Great, thank you very much. And there's a question coming in later in the discussion about getting the right capital structure for Metro and understanding that. You may well be able to answer that. Susan, I'm not going to ask you the 79 questions that are waiting for you, because I think we should ask you a completely different question, which is, what have you enjoyed in the last year about the 850th anniversary? What's been your personal highlights, rather than all the big challenges we're going to come to in a moment?
And I touched on it earlier. I think the thing that I've really liked is the way that folk have just taken it and run with it. We didn't have a massive budget for it in the City Council, but we had enough to be able to get our version of enabling infrastructure funding out to community organisations, to our existing festivals in the city and existing events, and then let people use their imaginations. And we saw that really grow. The 850 logo has just been taken and used, and we made it open source deliberately, as indeed our People Make Glasgow branding is, and the pink is, so that people could use it as they wanted, understanding that sometimes it might be used satirically or sarcastically against us as well, which we're absolutely fine with. It's actually a sign of a success, I think, of branding if people are using it for all different purposes. But we saw, so for example, I always say Glasgow doesn't have a castle like Edinburgh does. We always have to work that bit harder because we don't have a castle right in the city centre. But my colleagues in Pollock would give me a row for that, because we do have a castle. It's not in quite as good nick as Edinburgh Castle, but Crookston Castle out in the south side is a surviving ruin of a castle with connections to the Stuarts and to Mary Queen of Scots, for example. And the local community in Pollock organised a day of celebrating Crookston Castle, and they had a festival around it, and all sorts of activities going on. And that was something that they absolutely led, that we were able to support with a little bit of funding. But also, I think, at a bigger level, one of our long-standing major businesses, major corporates in the city, one of the ones that I think is a wee bit of a hidden secret in some ways. There's a lot of people wouldn't know that Morgan Stanley have been based in Glasgow, had a very significant presence in Glasgow as part of our financial and business services for a very long time. And they actually used the 850th anniversary and the 850 logo to align with celebrating their anniversary, their 30th anniversary of being in Glasgow. And so we've seen that at every level, from big global corporates right down to local communities, just going, right, how can we make this work for us? And it's been absolutely brilliant. My personal favourite event was the Clyde Chorus in the Hydro, in fact, where the Hydro was taken over. The tickets were £8.50, so really accessible for families, and they were absolutely taken over by families and kids to see a production that I think it was 14 primary schools in the city had worked with Scottish Opera to make their own half-hour opera about Glasgow. It was absolutely phenomenal, and the noise in that Hydro, I mean, it would have beaten Beyonce, the screaming that was taking place of joy and delight among the children and families that were there, going to that really cheap and accessible concert. Was just an absolute joy to be at.
Thank you very much, Susan. Great that there has been some personal highlights as well as the city highlights. I'm going to pitch you two questions now that have appeared in about 70 of the comments from colleagues. So a lot of people would like a bit more clarity about how the transport system is going to improve, how close you are to securing the funding agreement, and what kind of time can we start to make this more predictable? And the other question that's come up a lot is the question about the city centre, which people are saying is still not shining in the way it needs to be. And I know there's an important decision being made today that may help with that. But could you just comment on those two, and then I'm going to come back to the panel on some other themes?
Yeah, absolutely. And transport, I think we need to be really clear. Sometimes people will talk about Glasgow's transport system in a way that makes it seem like the entire thing is a disaster. It absolutely isn't. We actually have a decent transport system, and there are parts of Glasgow where we do have that functioning 15-minute city that you can aspire to. I'm lucky enough to live in one in Shawlands. I can 10-minute walk. I'm at a bus stop that will bring me to the city centre, or I'm on a train. We've got the best suburban rail network in these islands outside of London. I think we don't talk about that often enough. but it isn't a complete transport system. And we know that there are parts of the city, and we've done a lot of work to tell us. The Connectivity Commission that I established, the expert commission that I put in place back in 2018, gave us a brilliant report which Metro came out of, but also gave us that really solid understanding of what the challenges are around that everyday transport, buses primarily, and where the lack of connections are, and the bits of the city that aren't properly connected. And surprise, surprise, the bits of the city that lack connectivity are also the bits of the city that have the highest levels of deprivation. You can map it across the city. But that gives us a clear target, and it gives us a clear plan for what we need to do, how we need to reform our bus services, that we need to understand that it isn't simply about who owns it, who runs it, but how it's run, how the networks and the routes are created, who they serve, what the price points are, making sure that we've got a bus system that matches the needs of our residents. At the moment, and I say this as a daily public transport user in the city, we've got a bus network that matches some folks' needs really, really well, and other people's needs not well at all. And the people whose needs it should be matching are also the ones that most need to have that connectivity, to have access to work opportunities, to training opportunities, to college, or to apprenticeships. And so we have, I think, a clearer understanding than we've ever had of how we reform our system, how we use the opportunity of bus franchising, which my administration fully supports. It's not led by us, but by SBT, but we are 100% behind them on that. But use that opportunity to actually shape the system that we need to respond to the needs of the people in the city who at the moment don't have the connectivity that they need. And Metro then is a big part of that. Metro is another way to fill in those bits that at the moment aren't properly connected, and to do it on a regional basis right across the whole of the city region. We do have a history in Glasgow, unfortunately, of building, not just Glasgow, right across the city region, of building places that are great places of employment, but have really poor connectivity to them. I think of somewhere like Eurocentral, for example, outside the city boundary. But Cam talked earlier as well about the airport. The airport isn't just a place for people to fly in and out of. It's also a massive employer. It's a place where people go to their work, not just during the day, but right through the night as well. So we haven't been good at planning that over the years. Metro allows us to map together where we're growing, where jobs are growing, where the economy is growing, and how we connect that all up and make sure that it's not just about transport, it's also about opportunity, and it is about equity as well. And on the city centre, we know we're not there yet with the city centre. It's still got a way to go. We've made, from the City Council's point of view, we've made very significant investment in our frontline services. We were able to do that, not that we hadn't wanted to previously, but for the first time in our budget earlier this year, we had the opportunity to do that. We've invested £7 million in our frontline services in cleansing, in parks, and also in things like enforcement around fly tipping and commercial waste challenges, for example. And also, this won't be music to everyone's ears, but it is to a lot of residents in the city, in parking enforcement. We've made a lot of investment there as well. But all of those kind of services come together and work together in a way that supports the overall functioning of the city centre, works alongside businesses that are the lifeblood of our city centre, and supports them. I don't want to preempt the outcome of the bid vote too much. I personally do hope it is a positive outcome because we have had that gap there for quite a long time, and we're talking about quite a significant resource. Maybe about £15 million that could be reinvested directly into the issues in the city centre that businesses say are concerning them. And that is then businesses making that contribution themselves in a way that can be delivered in a really joined up and cohesive approach to getting our city centre to the way that we want it to be, to the aspirations that we all have for it over the coming years. I suppose just the last thing I'd add on that is, you know, the cliche about you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. We're going to have to break quite a few eggs on our way to getting the city centre that we deserve to have. That means there will be construction. That means there will be a bit of disruption. There will sometimes be road closures. We don't have you know, kind of public realm ferries that come in and do it overnight, unfortunately. But actually that's a good thing, because the public realm ferries wouldn't create jobs and investment and a pipeline of work for our construction and civil engineering companies in the city either. So all of that disruption is also growing our economy and supporting jobs. But what I hope it will show people is when you see the hoardings up, whether it's round George Square or other parts of the city, whether it's the council or the city region that's leading on it, or whether it is investors, existing players like the owners of Buchanan Galleries, for example, Landsec, who will be, I hope, on site next year. That is actually ambition in action, and it's the boring stuff that has to be done to get us to where we want to be.
Thank you very much, Susan. Very clear answers. And just for people in the room, I'm asking the questions that are most prominent in the 150 or so that have come in. Susan, there are two issues that I want to come back to with you after we've had another round with the other panellists. One is about child poverty, which several people have asked about, and the link between growth and poverty. And the other one is about child care and the importance of childcare as an enabler, but as an industry in itself. We'll come back to both of those. Ian, I want you to pick up now with you about the financing of Metro and see, you know, have you got a view on how close we're getting to having a capital structure, a financing package for the different phases? And then there's a question about whether we're getting the right levels of investment into energy, water, and other utilities.
Okay, so let me do the Metro first of all.
Yeah.
So it is early stages, and I know people have been working on it for years, but these things do take a long time. You look at London just now, so we just put, you know, like a big investment into the DLR there, but that's been going for 30 years. You know, so these are things that are lifetime sort of investments. The business case is, as I say, being worked on now, but where we want to help is that, you know, being able to bring the knowledge of people that actually finance these things. You know, so we've got a team that have worked on deals like that in the past. We're working on the Leeds Supertram as well, so we've got good ideas of what's going on. We're seeing the support that comes from other parts of, you know, government also, because these investments can't happen really by themselves. You know, the revenues you generate just won't pay for the investments, so you do need to join up parts of government, UK Gov, Scottish Gov. So that's part of our role there, to get involved at the business case stage and to understand the structure, but then also to look at how our funding can support it, but then what we can do with the wider market. And that could be, for example, you know, bringing the pension funds in and doing something where they fund it over 30 or 40 years. You know, it takes that long to pay the thing back. But there's a question about, you know, how we fund it, but we're willing to do that. You know, we just need to understand through the business case what the structure is going to be. But our aim is to move that forward and accelerate it as fast as we can.
And just to give people in the room, this is not a facetious question, when do you think that business case will be clear? When will the financing package be agreed?
That's a very good question there. Yeah. I mean, I really don't know. If I had to set a target there, I would say 3 to 5 years to get the business case done, get the finance package sorted out, and get things going. But it's going to be phased. You know, it's not going to be a big bang. As I say, the DLR is expanding still down in London. You know, so they're looking to do that. And what it does, if you go to, you know, Manchester or you know, or places like, for example, Nice, you can see the difference it makes in terms of it's not just about the transportation. You know, it's a psychological thing because people do use rail, possibly in preference to bus, etc. But it's opening up these city squares and, you know, other parts of the city. You know, and the transformation when you go through there and you see the tram going through, you know, squares have opened up with restaurants and bars, etc. It is really good.
Great. Okay, let's pick up this other question that's been asked about energy, water, waste, the utilities. Have you done any work assessing, what the investment requirement is there? Are there live projects in that space? The underpinning idea in the question is that as the economy grows and transitions and as the population moves, actually it's exposing some deficits there in terms of investment.
Yeah, and I think that's all around the UK. I'm firmly of the view that, the UK was a leader in the world 100 to 150 years ago. We did all the Victorian infrastructure and we've hardly invested since. And it's such a shame. But this is part of the ongoing work in terms of this big fund, which we're looking at in terms of, how you join it all up there, because you can't do one with others. So you can't do the decarbonisation of buildings and, separate that from heat and the generation of the power. And the rationale being that, they all come hand in hand there. What I would say is that from an investor point of view, you don't want to, mix and match actually within a fund. So part of our role as well is to work alongside the city region and to try and work out how you separate that into fundable elements, but then again, how you can actually take the different elements forward at the same time, because you want to do that and accelerate it. But I just don't think you can mix it all in the same pot.
Great, okay, thank you very much. And the question that's coming next is about, is Glasgow getting its fair share, as it were, of the national investment activity in comparison to other city regions? What does it need to do to really optimise the contribution from National Wealth Fund? That's the next question. Anna, there are lots of questions coming in for you, and people are enjoying the framework that you set out and the overall ideas. The two sharp questions are really about micro businesses and whether you think they play a role in this ecosystem, but also about businesses that are started by people who are not necessarily university graduates or scientists or people with, a recognised high qualification. What about ordinary businesses set up by ordinary people? Where do they feature in your thinking?
Yeah, I'd probably challenge the fact there is any ordinary people or ordinary businesses. I think every single business is...
Now that's my language,
yeah,
by the way.
I'm just making sure that nobody... Because I think we'd want to strongly, disagree that everybody that starts a business is... maybe they don't recognise themselves as founders or entrepreneurs, but actually I certainly didn't really, it's a tongue twister of a word anyway. You're just starting business to grow and do the best you can. And Scotland is made up of small businesses. What we want to do is make sure we're nurturing those, but ensuring that we're actually being ambitious about supporting the scale-ups that are out there in Scotland. And touching on some of the comments you made, Ian, as well, is I don't know if you've looked at the budget in detail, but there are one or two signs of reassurance for me around the fact that entrepreneurship it's not ideal, but there's things like doubling the EIS scheme, which is a really important feeder for investing in smaller stage companies, not big companies. But there's also announcements by organisations like the British Business Bank, where they're doubling the number of funds in growth funds in terms of reaching higher growth companies and more of them. But it's really important that Scotland is not on the margins there, because we have, as we've just talked about in Glasgow, you've got some like Discover and Chemify and organisations like that have to run right now, are having to go across the pond to get investment. So the funding and support is required all the way through, from right at the beginning and the micro businesses right to the scale-ups.
Great, and there's another question here about Business Gateway, asking you if it remains an important part of the overall strategy and platform, or what? So people want to know...
Well, it's definitely one of the key entry points and touch points for founders. But having written my Pathways report 2 years ago as well, I think that there are different entry points work better for different individuals. And every single touch point we can reach another person that maybe not consider entrepreneurship is a good thing. So it is funded right now by Scottish Government. It's certainly driven at local level, but there are other programmes that are driving incredible entrepreneur. I mean, I was in Stack earlier this week, and they've got incredible deep tech, really early stage businesses coming through that. And so there are multiple entry points, is what I would say, and they happen to be one of them right now. And I'd also challenge that the micro business piece, I talked about a company called Vive. That person didn't go to university. And that's what I'm trying to say. I think I'm a firm believer. I went to art college, we absolutely need to be embracing every single person that's in society in Scotland, because we are missing out on brilliant ideas and innovation just now because we don't actually reach them all. So I think that inclusive approach and strategy is actually critical for a successful growth economy and entrepreneurial economy.
Great, and if I can just keep you with the microphone for one more minute. Somebody in the room with a lot of people saying, yes, that's right, says, you didn't mention AI explicitly. Is there a reason for that? And what about businesses that are based on creative capability, design, music, film, fashion, food, etc., etc.? Where do they feature in your framework?
I am an embracer of multi-sector. I believe 100% that we need diverse businesses, not just our high capital intensive upfront businesses, which are going to be hugely innovative and create amazing solutions to societal problems, to cancer, to renewables, etc. But we absolutely need to embrace those other organisations that are not typically in the sexy cluster space, because they're going to contribute to the economy. And we know that AI is absolutely critical part of the next generation of businesses, and Scotland is doing pretty well there across all the cities, but we know that Edinburgh right now is hub to a number of the larger corporates. They're using that as their AI HQ, and I don't think AI is going anywhere, and the talk of a bubble and a boom and a burst is basically on valuation rather than on the actual function of AI as a central part of a business enabler. So I don't ignore it. I just believe that what we're investing in are people who can innovate and create great ways of using AI. And AI is just another output.
Great, thank you very much indeed. And Bailey, there's sort of three questions for you. One is about social enterprises, asking you really to pick up on your point at the beginning. What more needs to be done to really grow social enterprises, and are they properly recognised as being part of the system? And then there's a particular question about whether social enterprises could do more in the childcare space.
I think, first of all, we need to celebrate social enterprises, especially in Scotland. So for those who don't know, a social enterprise is a business that reinvests its profits back into a social cause, environmental and societal cause. And Scotland, when you look at us as a nation, we're one of the top leading nations when it comes to social enterprise. Last year, the Scottish Government welcomed a contingent from Canada who came to learn about Scotland's social enterprise sector, our infrastructure, and there's other nations too. 2 years ago, I was fortunate to go to the Social Enterprise World Forum in Amsterdam, and we had people from Australia and other nations coming to ask us to learn from us. So our sector is massive. It's contributing 3.5 billion to the Scottish economy alone, employing over 60,000 people and providing that societal, answering those societal problems that communities are facing. So I think we do need to celebrate Scotland. I think when the world looks at us, we're the third leading nation when it comes to social enterprise, and we don't talk about that enough. So I think that's the biggest problem. We don't recognise we're a leading nation when it comes to social enterprise, and the world is looking at us.
What could we do about that, Bailey?
Well, I'm part of the Social Enterprise Steering Committee, and I always say we need to talk more. I think it goes back to the first panel about branding, how we brand and how we communicate that, showcasing our social enterprises. So in Glasgow, we've got amazing social entrepreneurs. I've already mentioned Homes for Good. We've got Sylvia Douglas from Mrs., who is doing amazing things, one of the social entrepreneurs that I've been inspired by. And these social enterprises are just being birthed in communities. They're being birthed out of colleges. Yes, they're being birthed out of universities, but we need to spotlight them more. We need to talk about them. And I challenge everybody in this room, find 5 social enterprises in your local community, learn about them and talk about them. The government does have a great policy though. Across schools in Scotland, young people create social enterprises. So every time I have a down day, I go to school and I see the amazing things that children are doing, the problems that they're solving. This week I was at a school in Coatbridge, and the young people were addressing the poverty in their area. It was Bells Hill, sorry, poverty. They gave me statistics. 1 in 4 children is experiencing poverty. I was sitting there shocked thinking, oh my goodness, they know these statistics. So children are creating social enterprises. They're learning about social enterprises. We could do with more support when it comes to young people learning about business creation from a very young age. It shouldn't start at colleges, it shouldn't start in secondary school, it should start from the youngest. And I have found myself in schools sitting down on the ground with primary ones thinking they will not be able to get this. And it's surprising months later when I meet them at a Dragon's Den in the Glasgow City Chamber and they're talking about the societal problem that they're trying to solve. So yeah, my challenge to you, find 5 social enterprises, champion them, buy from them. That's the most important thing, buy from them so that we can continue to stimulate the local economy.
Wonderful. And could you say a little bit then about, is there an opportunity to do something big in childcare in the social economy? Is something already happening indeed?
So there are a few social enterprises, and I think the Pathways report, credit to you, Anna and Mark, highlighted that. So organisations like Business Gateway work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And when it comes to business support for entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs, you know, they're starting businesses from their kitchen table. They're starting businesses from outside society. So I think the Pathways report recognised the fact that we need to do extra things. So programmes need to include childcare. When we deliver programmes, we offer childcare. And when we're able to get support for that, it makes a difference. Going into inclusive spaces, so the entrepreneurial programmes that get delivered in churches with childcare. I see the team at the Scottish Asian Business Chamber, they go into mosques, deliver their programmes. And I think that's what we need to recognise is there are other issues that entrepreneurs face, even just walking into spaces. Are our buildings inclusive enough? Do we even consider childcare in our buildings? And I was talking about this last night and even this morning is quite a lot of the places I go to, I always think, would my 8-year-old son feel comfortable here? Would the people in the room make him feel comfortable? And I've taken him to places. I went to an inclusive entrepreneurship conference in Belfast in their city hall. He was made to feel so welcome in there. But then I've also taken him into Codebase, which I showed Anna the picture, and he was made to feel welcome there. But there's other spaces that I just think aren't inclusive enough, and we've not thought about childcare spaces to deliver the programs that we're doing. But we do see social enterprise childcare providers rising up. So one of the ones that we use, and we're using them in our program, is an organisation called Bethel Fingers. So if we have a conference, they provide childcare for us. If we have workshops, they provide childcare for us. And we're seeing more and more, but we do need more nursery support. We do need the hours being supported, and we also need support for, you know, there's childcare courses in colleges, but we also need to make sure that those entrepreneurs in colleges are getting the right support to think, not only could I be a childminder, but I can also start a nursery, I can also start a mobile creche, and we need those mobile creches that, imagine if we had children in one of the other rooms, that any parent that came who was having childcare issues knew that their children were being looked after in another room at State of the City conference.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Bailey. Great to have you with us. Susan, I'm going to come back to you. Those 2 issues, child poverty raised by lots of people as being a big challenge in the city, and then your comments on the childcare issue. Then we'll go to Ian for that question about investability. We're going to come back to you for reactions to what the First Minister said, and then we'll close. Okay?
So, child and family poverty is the overarching priority of not just Glasgow City Council, but all of our partners in Glasgow's Community Planning Partnership. We are collectively signed up to say this is the thing that we need to focus on, that we need to tackle, that we need to collectively address, is child and family poverty. It is not only the biggest blight on the lives of far too many children in our city, it is, and we're at an economic conference, it is the biggest barrier, the biggest thing holding back our economic potential as a city and as a wider city region. For me, I mean, you know, The city on its own, and not even the city region on its own, is never going to be able to address this in isolation. It needs to be a whole society approach, so all levels of government, but also a genuine, a civic response as well. I would, to give just one example, I'm very pleased, very relieved that this week we've finally had confirmation that the two-child cap will be removed. All of our data in Glasgow shows that to a very significant degree, the story of child poverty in Glasgow is the story of larger families, and it has been driven by the two-child cap, and all of the evidence shows us that. So I have often described our role and what we want to achieve is not only at the local level. It's not just keeping people's heads above water. There should be safety nets provided by national governments to do that. Our role at the local level, working with people much more as individuals, working very closely with third sector partners and with social enterprises throughout the city, is to get people out of the water onto dry land and keep them there and support them there. Not just lift people out of poverty, but sustain people out of poverty, and then sustain the pathways and journeys for the children coming from those families right through life, so that they can get to college, for example, and connect with the work that Bailey's doing in our colleges, and not think that being an entrepreneur or working in a Morgan Stanley or in any of the incredible startups and scale-ups that we've heard about this afternoon, that any of that is cut off to them. That is a whole society approach. It has been made very, very difficult over the past decade and more. There is no question that policies that have come from the Westminster government have, to extend that metaphor, pushed people further back down into the water. And often all we have been able to do is to keep their heads above water. But I'm very clear that tackling that child and family poverty, ensuring that no matter what background any kid in Glasgow or the city region comes from, we are working with them in their particular circumstances, supporting their family to make sure that we're moving them on from poverty, we're keeping them out of poverty, and we're opening up opportunities and chances that will allow them to have the same ambitions and the same ownership of their own lives that a kid from a more affluent background would have. I'm not going to list all the policy interventions that we do in Glasgow, because we'd be here for a while. And what I would recommend to those of you who are really interested in this, go on the council website. We do an annual report on child poverty to the City Administration Committee. And we also report every year on interventions like our holiday programme, for example, which is one of the policies of a wide range of policies that we have to support families living in poverty. And it might seem a really odd thing to say, but those reports, although the statistics in them are awful and are frustrating and are tragic, actually those reports are quite uplifting, often because they're telling stories of families who are being given the opportunity to change their circumstances, and sometimes realising for the first time, because no one's ever given them that chance before. And on this, one of the organisations we work really closely with, I'll just finish on this bit, is One Parent Families Scotland. And they did an event in the City Chambers last year, which I was really glad to speak at. And they were celebrating the outcomes, some of the amazing outcomes and uplifting outcomes from the partnership work that we do with them. And there was an incredible young woman there who had come from really difficult circumstances herself. And what she said was that the most important thing that she had been given was self-actualization, a belief in herself that she had not grown up with, but that the support that had been provided to her through the third sector, supported by the City Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership, had given her the belief that her and her child had the right to succeed and the right to have the same ambitions as anyone else and the same control over their own destinies and their lives. That, I think, is ultimately what we need to be achieving. And as I say, I think that is absolutely Muchirao. That is a collective community effort that all of us need to be putting our shoulders to the wheel for, because the rewards that we get from that are the best rewards that we can get from any piece of work that we do. And on childcare, I think it's incredibly important. The way Bailey's spoken about it and the questions get it absolutely right. Not just childcare, but care at both ends of our life journey is absolutely crucial. It is a crucial economic sector in its own right and a growth sector, and it is a crucial enabler, an enabler of particularly, not only, but particularly women to be able to access the workforce, to earn, to support their families in a way that they might not otherwise have been able to do. So that affordable and wherever possible, free childcare and care for older people, our parents and our grandparents, and ultimately ourselves as we get older and need that support, is a crucial enabling functioner within our economy. But also the city region, the Glasgow city region, and it's something that Andy Haldane, who many of you will know, former chief economist for the Bank of England, he singled out as being a particular thing that he says the Glasgow city region is doing that he's not seeing being done in other combined authorities elsewhere in the UK. So that focus on our foundational economy, on lifting our foundational economy, making sure that we are a living wage place, that people have career opportunities, advancement opportunities within professions and sectors like childcare, that it isn't a Cinderella profession that's forgotten about, but actually it's something that we recognise as being absolutely central to the healthy and effective functioning of a good, inclusive economy. And that's something we have a big focus on. Myself and my colleagues from the other local authorities in the city region discuss regularly at our cabinet the progress that we are making on lifting up those sectors and those job roles and making sure that we're doing the right thing for those the people that are doing those jobs, as well as for the people that are at the cutting edge and the founders, and also recognising that folk working in childcare can be founders and entrepreneurs and often are in their own right as well.
Thank you very much, Susan. So in a minute, we'll come back to your reaction to what the First Minister said. But firstly, Ian, there may be a perception in the room that other parts of the UK, perhaps Manchester, perhaps Birmingham, perhaps, are getting more investment than the Glasgow City region is. Is that true in your view? Is there a way of looking at that? And secondly, what does Glasgow need to do anyway to optimise the investment that it wants?
Well, I mean, first of all, it feels a bit abstract to be talking about that now, just after Susan's words on childcare, you know, and as a father, just all the stuff that you're doing, and the fact that, you know, we don't have the benefits cap now, I think is just sensational. In terms of the fair share, I think you're right. So we've possibly focused in terms of some of the investment that's gone in Scotland. It's been on some of the startups. So I mentioned Pulpex, Zero Via. We've also invested in XLCC on the Ayrshire coast. So it has been at the smaller company end rather than the big infrastructure. I think as a portion of the National Wealth Fund in terms of, you know, the number of investments, we've done our fair share. We do actually have a Scottish team, Eddie McAvinci, who you might have met, and Michelle Howells, who's ex-Scottish Enterprise. So that, you know, they're a really good team and they're working well. But what we've not done so well is work actually with the cities so far. And the partnership with the Glasgow City region is really important, but it's in its early stages. So that's one that we'll run. And to make that happen more, we've gone into the market. So we're out trying to recruit a team to be based here that will work in the city. And our Scottish team anyway, I actually live in Glasgow. So that's helpful, but we are trying to get people that will be based here so we can actually look at, you know, with the city, how we can actually move forward and accelerate those type of investments. And as we talked about before, where we think there is a failure in the private sector market, we can step in and fund that.
Very good. And then what does the Glasgow City region need to do to optimise the investment that comes? What do they need to do here?
They need to work with us. They need to work with different parts of the ecosystem. And just to focus about, you know, as I say, when we in our first week to get this document, which none of the other city regions, you mentioned West Mids, Greater Manchester, who are all really forward-looking. They didn't give us any document like that, so you guys had it. So now it's a case of prioritising it, and that has to be a laser focus on getting the first wins, getting the first deals invested in, whether it's us or with other people, and then to be able to show the market. Because part of that drive then gets the investment going, and then you can start to build, your team. The key is to have a team as well. So, we were speaking actually yesterday to City Leap down in Bristol, and everyone talks about how great that is. But what they did was they took half of the council's team, so they lost their clients. So it's building the team in the city also.
Great, thank you very much. So, Susan, the final question. You issued, I think, a bold and ambitious invitation to the First Minister to engage in deepening the devolution and to give the city region more authority. And what did you make of his response?
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I think he said very much what I wanted to hear from him. That commitment to enabling legislation, I think, is absolutely crucial. But most importantly, it's enabling legislation which will allow us in the Glasgow City region to shape the devolution deal that we know will work for us. It's not an imposition. It's not focusing or obsessing about inputs rather than the outcomes that we want to focus on. I hope it will be light touch legislation that will look at the things that we need legislated for, and I think there are some things that we need to legislate for, particularly around comparing the Glasgow and the Clyde corridor. We always say is the biggest untapped development opportunity in Europe. And maybe one of the ways to untap that is to create something like the London Docklands Development Agency, for example. That would need a bit of legislation, but there's an awful lot that we don't need legislation for. It is about commitment, and it's about that willingness, and that's what he demonstrated today. He didn't just demonstrate, he said it. I will be holding him to it, believe me. I mean, I think I trust him that he's not going to have said that and not follow through on it. So that Scottish Government bit, that Scottish Government ask, it sounds to me like we're underway on that now, starting to devolve the powers. I suspect we will have some tough negotiations. We'll want more. They might try and push back a bit, and we'll land somewhere where we want to be. We might phase devolution of some things over the years. All of that's fine. What I want to be clear is that we're on the right journey, and that our record of success in the Glasgow City region is trusted. And that they listen to us and recognise that we know what we need. We do know what we need, and I'm really glad to hear Ian reflect that. And we're delighted to have this strategic partnership with the National Wealth Fund, I should say. But I'm really glad that when he came along, my team just went, "Yep, here's what we want. Here's our list." That's exactly where we are. So we've got a bit of negotiating to do to work out what it looks like, how we actually deliver it. But I think that we're clearly aligned on where we want to get to, and that's the most important thing. What our outcomes are, what our shared ambitions are. With the UK government, we've still got some work to do. We've had some really good investments from the UK government, and I'm absolutely not going to gainsay those. I'm delighted to be an investment zone. I'm delighted that we've had the Innovation Accelerator, now the Local Investment Partnership, the Local Innovation Partnership funding, an additional £50 million. I'm delighted that we have our strategic partnership with the National Wealth Fund. These are all great interventions, and we've been really pleased to work with the National Wealth Fund, with Innovate UK, for example, and other partners to really maximise the impact of those investments within the city region. But the bit that's missing is that capital investment that our peers, and they are our peers, Greater Manchester, West Midlands, West Yorkshire, have had and had committed to them in England, because they have also had all of those things. Greater Manchester and West Midlands have also got an investment zone, have also had Innovation Accelerator funding. So it's not an instead of, it needs to be an as well as. And my message to the UK government is, this will be, in terms of bang for your buck, this will be the best capital investment you can make in the returns that you'll get from the Glasgow City region, from the Clyde corridor, from all that post-industrial land that I talked about earlier. That bit of enabling investment, going back to Cowlairs, Cowlairs is massively undermined. That's why it's been vacant for so long. It needs quite a bit spent underground before you can build a single thing in it. And an awful lot of the Clyde corridors like that is what Clyde Gateway has been doing really well over the period of its existence. But compared to the returns that you get from that bit of public sector enabling investment, it is absolutely an investment that will deliver you massive bang for your buck. So we're not just saying, give us the money because the others have had it and we want it too. We're kind of saying that, but we're also saying this is the right investment for you to make as a government. If you're serious about economic growth, then invest in enabling infrastructure along the Clyde corridor, and we will deliver that growth for you, and we will deliver it in a way that is also genuinely transformational for our economy and for society and for people's lives.
Thank you very much, Susan. So, colleagues, this has been the 27th State of the City Economy Conference. You heard a lot about celebration at the beginning, what's happened in the last period of time. You heard a lot about where Glasgow is winning the competition to be the right place to invest, to set up a business, to be an entrepreneur, to live, to gain skills. You heard also some big challenges, the challenge that came from the protesters, the challenge that came around how do we grow and tackle poverty and become more sustainable at the same time. And then lastly, what you heard was a commitment to deepen the devolution, a commitment to deepen the capital that's deployed and to deepen the momentum and the progress. So it's been, I think, a very productive morning. Thank you all for your patience and for your staying power. Join me, please, in thanking Bailey Adiotti, Susan Aitken, Anna Stewart, and Ian Watson. Thank you very much indeed.